we're going to start by interviewing judges, Superior Court judges for seat 1 and seat 2. We have several candidates that are vying for this seats, and we will be starting by interviewing the candidates. Then after we finish interviewing the candidates, we are going to be moving to conduct the interviews for the different measures, and that will be chaired by our Vice President, Lovett. And before we start, I just want to take this moment to also thank all of my colleagues for being here today, for taking time of your busy weekend schedule to be here and to do something that's really important for us as the Democratic Party. So thank you everyone for being here today, and also for everyone that is at home or wherever you're at watching this important democratic process, which is interviewing candidates and interviewing those who are being proponents or opponents of the different measures for the city and county of San Francisco. So with that, Moises, I turn it back to you. And I want to say before anything, also my co-chair, Member Barry, for always being very diligent and working really hard in crafting a lot of the questions that have been asked of the candidates. And also to our executive director, Moises Garcia, who without him, we would not be able to function as well as we do. So thank you, Executive Director Garcia. And with that, I turn it to you.
Welcome. Sure, I will take a roll call just so we have it. Abelos, Baraka, Barry.
Present.
Campos, Chen, Dufty, Bellotta.
Present.
Ibanez.
Present.
Kim, Lacroix, Lee.
Here.
Loftus, Lovett.
Present.
Mahogany, Mandelman, Mar, Moliga, Raza, Raju, Ronan, Thomas, Tung.
Here.
Williams, Zoe, Pelosi, Mullen, Kounalakis, Ma, Cohen. Thank you. Cohen.
I'm sorry, here, present proxy, Kurt Grimes.
Thank you. Wiener, Aney, Ting. You have quorum, chairs. And we also have Michael Berger waiting to be promoted to a panelist.
Okay, so I think we can go ahead and start, Moises. And I think, I guess before we start, just so all of us can be on the same page, in regards to the questions, just so we know, if you can, the questions, we're going to do a 2-minute introduction, and then we're going to have 5 minutes to ask and the 5 minutes is for questions and answers combined, Moises?
The 4-minute, we only time the responses. We don't time the members' questions in case they're verbose.
Thank you. And then we have 1 minute for a closing statement, and that's for the 4 candidates that we are going to be interviewing today. And then I'll relay that to them. And then Moises, you're going to be keeping time, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you're going to have your phone, the alarm is going to go off, or how?
I'll put up like a sheet.
Okay.
That says like a minute or 30 seconds.
Okay, perfect. So I think with that, we can go ahead and start unless anyone has any questions.
No, so I think the candidate can go ahead and start with their introduction.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to tell you a little about myself. My mother is a Japanese immigrant. We grew up in a small town, and I had a lot of exposure to my parents' friends, many of whom were Japanese Americans. And often they would talk about their time in the camps, which I didn't understand at the time, but I later understood was a euphemism for when the US government imprisoned people in this country purely based on their race. They weren't bitter about it, they weren't angry about it. It was just a fact for them, something like where they went to high school. So that went into my head. Later on, when I worked in the summertime picking berries in the fields, and I worked side by side with farm workers, I realized that while I was trying to earn money so that I could buy baseball cards, they were earning money so that they could feed their children. That went into my head. Later on, or throughout my childhood, actually, a formative part of my thinking was my father dragging us out of bed every Sunday morning, making us put on a collared shirt and a tie and a jacket, and driving us in the station wagon, my two brothers and my two sisters and me, to Catholic church. And there I would hear stories, and they were stories about compassion. And I learned that I would be measured not by how much money I make or by my grades in school, but how I treated the least of my brothers. And I came to San Francisco in 1989 because I believed that this is a community that cares about everyone. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to open this for our colleagues to ask any questions. And I see that Member Berry put her name on stack. And if any other member would like to ask questions, you can raise your hand or you can put stack on chat. So we'll start with Member Berry. And it looks like Mr. Grimes has his hand up as well. So you can ask your question, Mr. Grimes, after Member Berry. Thank you.
And actually, Cherry Bonus, I'd like to yield to Member Grimes, the proxy for Malia Cohen.
Excellent. So Mr. Grimes, go ahead and ask your question. Mr. Bigger, you have, once you start answering your questions, you're going to have 5 minutes. So go ahead, Mr. Berger. Go ahead, Mr. Grimes, sorry.
Okay. My question is kind of it's I think it's brief, but here we go. You're running for judge, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. As a judge, do you know of any particular city agencies that could work with our criminal justice system?
I know of many, and I have been working with many, the Department of Public Health primarily, also the Adult Probation Department, the Police Department, the BART Police Department, and the Sheriff's Department. I run 4 different treatment courts, and I also work with the Veterans Administration because one of them is the Veterans Justice Court. So all of those outside agencies are very important to the work that I do.
Well, let me be more specific then. My question should be more along the lines of, in terms of career development, barrier removal, soft skills training, things that kind of affect some of the problems that the criminal system is placing now. Do you find that are any agencies that could possibly work with this to help you in your endeavor?
I'm not sure I understand the question better than my first answer, because those agencies are the agencies I think that can get people access to the services that they need so that they can improve their lives and restore their dignity, which I think makes all of us safer.
Career development?
So I'm sorry, I don't think I'm understanding your question. So let me
Well,
try to hear it again.
one of the things that I'm concerned about is when someone has to go to court and there's possible sentencing that's going to happen. Is there any sort of partnership with the judicial panel or with the justice system that works with those individuals to help them get either further their education or to help them find a sustainable job here in San Francisco where they can, grow and develop from what they're being charged with?
That's what I do, not through sentencing, but through diversion courts. So I run a drug court, a veterans justice court, a community justice court, and then a non-criminal court, which is the care court. All of those programs are designed to help people get access to educational opportunities, employment opportunities, housing opportunities, mental health and substance use treatment opportunities, so that they can address the underlying conditions, the circumstances of their lives that resulted in their being involved in the criminal justice system. So that's what I am doing, and I'm working with a variety of agencies in order to provide those services.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Sorry, it took several tries there.
No worries. No worries. It might be my fault too.
Thank you so much. Member Gloria, since you yield your time, do you mind if we let Member Tung go next?
I'm actually concerned about the 5 minutes being used up.
Okay.
We're
So
at
I'd like to-
3:30.
You would like to go? Go ahead.
Yes, I would. Your
Mhm.
Honor, thank you for being here. My question is, could you please explain mental health diversion and the updates made to Penal Code 1001.36 that took effect on January 1st, 2023?
Yeah, so mental health diversion is a statute that says that if somebody is suffering from a mental health disorder, and that disorder has caused them to engage in criminal activity, and they would respond to treatment, that their case can be diverted without them pleading guilty, and they can access treatment services to address the underlying causes of the behavior, in the hopes that that will make everybody safer and better off. The most recent changes to that law were to strengthen the presumption that there is a connection between your mental health disorder and the criminal behavior, and to make clear that mental health disorder includes a substance use disorder. So the DSM-5 defines mental health disorders, and one of those disorders is if you have a substance use disorder, meaning if you are addicted to drugs, then that qualifies as a mental health disorder, and there is a presumption that your addiction to drugs was related to the criminal behavior.
Thank you. And I won't ask all my questions, so I want to give Member Tung a chance, but I have one more, and that is when it comes to collaborative courts, why would you admit a defendant who has a prior record of convictions to collaborative courts?
Because that's, if in a particular case you determine that that's the most effective way to address their challenges. I think we have a history of finding that people who are whose issues are dealt with by incarceration have very high rates of recidivism. So the fact that you've been convicted before and you've gone to jail or prison and you reoffend, that's an indication that what we're doing is not working. So maybe we should try to treat the underlying issues, and everybody would benefit from that. I don't actually make most of those determinations. They're made by an agreement between the district attorney and defense counsel. And by the time they get to me, those determinations have already been made.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Right. So the next question will, or the next person to ask question is Member Tung.
Thank you, Member Banya. Good morning, Judge Beggart. It's nice to see you this morning. I wanted just to give you an opportunity to address some of the criticisms that have been levied against you in your judicial role with respect to releasing defendants, any kind of criticism that you want to respond to, and just give you an opportunity to do that.
What I've been doing for the past almost 5 years are these criminal diversion courts. And I think there's a misunderstanding about how those courts work. So people either come to me because there's a pre-existing agreement between the district attorney and defense counsel that the person is appropriate for my court, or there's a statutory authorization like the mental health diversion that we were talking about earlier. So in applying mental health diversion, I follow the law. In terms of people who are referred to me, those determinations are made in the criminal court before they're sent to me. Everyone understands when the case gets to the diversion court that the person is not going to remain in custody because they can't access treatment in jail. So by the time they get to me, there is an understanding that at some point they're going to get out in order for them to engage in treatment. Usually what happens is that I issue an order which allows the treatment folks to actually pick somebody up from jail and take them to a program where they can begin addressing their challenges. So that's how it actually works. And the criticisms against me, I think, may be based on a misunderstanding of what I do.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Executive Director Moses, do we have time to allow Member Berry ask her other questions that she had?
There's 13 seconds remaining for responses.
Okay. So, sorry, Member Berry, we only have 13 seconds. I really appreciate you asking your questions, and if not, we're gonna move along. Mr. Berger, you have 1 minute to do a closing statement. And again, Executive Director Garcia will be letting you know how much time you have left before your minute is up.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the community. I work with people who have an opportunity to change their lives, and it's a real privilege to be able to watch them do that and to be able to help them to do that. I have a lot of people who tell me that I have actually helped them change their lives and move into a positive direction. That's a real honor for me, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much. And I want to correct myself, and I need to be able to say Your Honor Berger rather than Mr. Berger. Thank you.
That's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move along. And once again, thank you for being here. And Moises, is our other candidate ready?
They are not in the room yet. Let me follow up with our campaign manager to get them on.
Perfect. We should give them a couple of minutes and wait, and if not, we should move along if possible.
All right, as co-chair of this body, I just want to let members of the public know we're waiting for our next candidate. I don't know if there's technical difficulties or whatnot, but that is what the pause is for. Other than that, do we know if our next candidate is in the room? Judge Thompson?
Not yet. 1 minute.
Okay.
Hey, Ali, this is Moises with SF Dems.
Moises, you want to mute yourself?
Yes, we'll do.
As co-chair Barry member indicated, we're taking a pause, waiting for the next candidate to come up. So.
What about candidate Roland? Are they present? Okay.
I'm just going to give them the link. They'll be on shortly.
Any responses from candidate?
Yeah, I'm giving them the link. They should be on in a minute, and then I'll follow up
Okay.
with other folks to keep us on time.
And then this is going to be candidate Secker, or is it going to be candidate Thompson for seat 13?
It is Zecker.
Okay, thank you. Again, to those of you who are watching from home or other places, we're just waiting for candidate Secker to join us shortly. Thank you. If you just join us and you're wondering why there is a pause, it's because we're waiting for one of the judge candidates to join us, and he will be joining us shortly.
Okay, he's on. I'm going to promote him.
Good morning, Mr. Secker. Can you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us in our candidates for endorsements interview. Just to let you know the process, how it's going to work in terms of the interview, you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. Then we're going to allot you 5 minutes to answer questions from the members. The 5 minutes would only be time when you're answering the questions. And then at the end of the questions, you will be asked to provide us with a closing statement. And with that, you would have a minute. So go ahead and start with your statement.
Great. Thank you very much. By the way, I was in another meeting room, so I apologize. They gave me the wrong link. Good morning. My name is Chip Zecker. I'm running for Superior Court Judge. I've been an attorney for 33 years. The first half of my career, I practiced as a civil litigator, and the last half, I've been corporate counsel to a couple companies down in Silicon Valley. I've lived in San Francisco since 1986 and in the same house in the Sunset since 1996. I am currently running to address problems that I've seen and ask for the judges to have more accountability and the people in the criminal justice system to have more accountability for the problems that we're seeing on the streets. I am a board member at the University of California College of the Law, San Francisco, formerly known as Hastings in the Tenderloin. And there I've become readily familiar with the challenges on our streets. And that's why I'm running, to have a little more accountability in our system.
Thank you so much. And I also want to let you know that Executive Director Garcia will be posting up a paper indicating of the time that you have left once it gets closer to the end of the 5 minutes. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And again, you can add your questions on Stack, raise your hand, And it looks like Member Barry raised her hand as well as she added her name stack. And then Member Galata, you will ask your question after Member Barry. And then Mr. Grimes, you will be allotted to ask a question. And I know you're here proxying for Member Cohen. And it looks like Member Tung also put her name on stack. So go ahead and lead us, Member Barry.
Thank you, Co-Chair Banes. Thank you, Mr. Zecker, for participating in this process. I have two questions. My first question is, you've been, like you stated, a corporate lawyer for decades, not a trial lawyer. How are you qualified to be a judge without recent litigation experience?
That's a very good question. I don't believe you lose your ability to participate in court proceedings. As an attorney for the first 15 years, I tried cases, civil matters in the 9 Bay Area counties. One doesn't lose those skills at all. I don't believe that I will have any difficulty being a judge and conducting trials in the courtroom.
Okay, and then my second question real quick is, I believe you are a member of Safe SF. Is that true?
No, ma'am, that's not true. It's Rescue SF. And
Rescue.
yes, and go ahead.
Okay. Well, what are Rescue SF goals and who are its primary funders?
Well, we'd like to find funders because we're completely a volunteer organization. Rescue SF looks at ways of trying to get the unhoused up the housing ladder. So we look at areas like small homes, reducing construction costs, reducing the amount of red tape involved in trying to get construction projects approved. We look at ways to try and see how to get mental health, medical health, employment services to the unhoused to try and move them up the housing ladder. And so we work with ways of identifying best practices by looking at cities throughout the US and around the world, and then identifying those best practices, and then we offer those to the city and county of San Francisco and the various agencies to try and help them promote in their programs the most effective measures that exist in the world today.
So next question, Mr. Galata. Member Gloria, sorry. Did you have any other follow-up questions? Thank you. So Member Galata.
Thank you, Co-Chair Banyas. Thank you, Mr. Zecker, for being here. I have two questions. One, you mentioned in your opening statements problems that you see with the Superior Court, and you also mentioned the need for accountability. And I'd just like to ask if you can point more specifically to and speak on that. What are the problems that you see? And when you talk about accountability, what do you mean by that?
That's a great question. Accountability means that if there are bad actors on the street, we normally wouldn't expect that those bad actors would be released back on the street without any accountability measures imposed by the judge. So that's what we're looking at. Secondly, we're looking at trying to get accountability from the courts. Right now, there is no way for us to understand what the judges are doing unless we go down to to the Superior Court building and pull every single paper file that a judge has heard and review the decisions that way. And I think the voters have a right to understand what their judges are doing, where they stand on matters, and it should be a more open process. So both myself and ADA Gene Rowland are running on the platform of trying to promote more accountability and more transparency in our system.
Thank you so much. With that, Mr. Grimes, you can ask your question.
Mr. Zucker, thank you very much for your time and being here. I believe he may have answered one of my two questions, and that was, could he address some of the problems that he's seen? Is there any way you can sort of elaborate on some of the stuff you just answered with Mr. Galati's question?
Sure, Mr. Grimes. That's a great question, and I'm sorry that I missed that second part from Mr. Galata, but here goes. At UC Law, the past weekend, we had a shooting on Friday and a shooting on Sunday, which killed 2 people. In September, we had a double homicide across the street from the college on Turkenhide in front of La Casina. That was a single mother cooperative. That shooting shut the cooperative down. Those moms are now unemployed. We have to employ urban alchemy that stands guard around a perimeter of the school in order to be able to promote the safe passage of our faculty, staffs, and students. We have problems with open air drug markets on the street. I have to say, it's really rather shameful that we allow our unhoused to be subjected every day to those types of perils on the street, to the readily and easily available drugs that allow them to remain addicted. In working with the unhoused, we do know that it's hard to keep your housing if you have an addiction. So these issues all need to be dealt with. Although those are really political matters for the city and county of San Francisco, the areas where we are concerned is we would like the judges to have a little more accountability when they're looking at the bad actors on our streets.
Considering that, can you tell me, or can you tell us, are there any city agencies that you would utilize to make sure that this happens?
So as a judge, I'm only allowed to hear matters in front of me. However, if you're asking, would I utilize city resources, certain programs for rehabilitation of individuals that assist in the rehabilitation of individuals for their drug and alcohol abuse, or assist individuals in finding housing, or assist individuals in finding employment? The answer to that is absolutely yes, I would, because I want everyone who appears in front of me to be able to make the best life they can after they leave my courtroom.
Thank you.
Executive Director, how many more seconds or minutes do we have to complete the 5-minute?
12 seconds.
12 seconds. So we do have quite a few members who would like to ask questions. We have approximately 5 members. Is it possible, would this body be interested in extending it to 2 more minutes?
Sure.
Good. I would like that.
Do a vote on that, or do we, is this acclamation?
We can do it by acclamation, and the reason for that
Any
is
objection?
we do have 5 members who would like to ask questions, and I would like to add 2 minutes to this, if that's okay with this body. It could be by acclamation or it could be by a vote. So,
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor if we can add 2 additional minutes.
So moved.
Second.
okay, so we'll do it by acclamation. And with that, we will let the next person whose hand was up is Member Trung. And then let me just tell you the order that I saw the hands and stack that came up. Member Trung, Member Lovett, Member LaCroix, and proxy for Member Ma. So with that, Member Trung, you may ask your question.
Thank you very much. I would just like to hear in your own words why you think voters should vote for you versus your opponent, who is the incumbent judge.
Sure, that's a great question, Nancy, and thank you. I believe that my experience level is the same as Michael Baggart's was when he was appointed to the bench. So there really was no difference. He was a civil litigator. I was a civil litigator. He had no criminal law experience before he joined. I have no criminal law experience before I joined. The difference between him and me largely is how involved we are in the community and what we do. I live in San Francisco. I've been a resident since 1986. I live in the Sunset. I know my neighborhood. He doesn't live in the city. I cannot, unfortunately, talk about his record as I am bound by the judicial canons on not criticizing any decisions that he's made or any cases that are pending before him. But I will say that I am running in order to promote accountability throughout the whole system and promote transparency throughout the whole system.
Thank you so much, Member Love.
Just a quick follow-up as well.
Member Tung, can we actually allow other members, because we only have 1 minute, can we allow them to ask their questions so voices of equity can be heard across, if that's okay with you?
No, I appreciate everyone getting a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Lovett.
Thank you, Member Ibanez. So in your response to question 9 of the questionnaire, you said that the judicial canon prevented you from commenting about the state legislature's new care courts. However, without speaking about how you would treat or work with any individuals, can you actually talk about how you would go about implementing the law in light of the experience that you've had with unhoused policies and practices for unhoused individuals? Thank you.
Sure. I'm actually delighted at Governor Newsom's legislation for care court. It's very necessary. These streets do contain individuals who suffer from schizophrenia or other mental illnesses. The process in place for that does permit us to go ahead and conserve these people and get them medication and get them back on the right path. I think it's very shameful that we allow people to exist without access to medical care. This program provides it, and I'm delighted that it is in existence.
Thank you so much. And proxy for Member Ma withdrew his questions. So Member LaCrosse.
Hi, thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez, and good morning or maybe afternoon, Mr. Zecker. I have a quick question. So you mentioned previously about wanting to have a more open and transparent process within, your if elected into this role. And so I was wondering if you can please provide a few specific examples of how, that is not, in your viewpoint, that is not existing at present, and what you would do to create a more open, transparent, and thoughtful process.
Sure. And thank you very much, Ms. Lacroix, for your question. I start off by saying, how many of you actually know a judge? How many of you actually know what a judge does on a daily basis? Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Okay, all right, so great. And this is probably a more politically active group of individuals here than most of the residents of San Francisco. What I've been hearing is that no one understands judges' races, no one understands what judges do, no one understands their impact on our public safety. That all needs to be more transparent. We need to have the public understanding what our judges are doing. My race is putting a spotlight on the performance of judges and their impact on public safety. That's a discussion that we're now having that we haven't had before. We're also looking at when we want to know what judges are doing, there must be an easier way than sending someone down to City Hall to pull paper files and understand what a judge is doing. We should be understanding the types of rulings and decisions that are being made, the types of problems and issues that are regularly before them, these are very important for us to be able to, as a whole, get our city back on track and try to deal with the huge problems that we face on our streets and our public safety challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So much. Before we close and we go into the closing statement, is it possible, as the chair, could I ask a question, Moises? And it's regarding to the questionnaire. I guess I'm calling out the prerogative of the co-chair. So I do have some questions, and it's regarding your questionnaire. I noticed that you failed to answer 3 questions that are very important and are essential to us as a Democratic Party. The question that you failed to answer is, when did you first register as a Democrat? That's 1. 2, have you read the California Democratic Party platform? And the last question is, will you fight to implement policies supported in the Democratic Party platform?
Okay. I have been a Democrat since 1984. I believe that was the first time I registered to vote for, I believe it was Walter Mondale ran against Ronald Reagan in 1984. I've also been a very big and consistent donor to the Democratic Party for the last 20 years. I've served on the Newsom transition team for the mayoralship, and I've been very close to a number of our Democratic leaders over the years. So I am a tried and true Democrat. There's no way around that. The second question you asked was if I read the Democratic platform. Yes, I am familiar with the Democratic platform. The third item you asked me is, would I implement those procedures? Is that right?
Yes. Will you fight to implement policies supported in the Democratic Party?
Yes, yes. I personally am a Democrat. I love the platform. However, as a judge, when you put on the robe, you cannot have any biases. You're not permitted to be able to have any preconceived ideas. And as a judge, you must follow the law. So to the extent that you're successful in passing the platform to get it to become law, yes, I will follow it once it's law.
For some other questions that were left blank, but because we have to move along, I am not going to.
Sure, I'm surprised those were left blank. I apologize for that because there should be no reason those were left blank. I wonder if someone sent you the wrong copy. I'll make sure I go back and ask, but please keep on asking questions.
Well, thank you. No, so now you have 1 minute to do a closing statement.
All right, well, first off, I'd like to thank everybody today for sacrificing your Saturday to come in and ask me questions. This is all part of the democratic process, which is really important. And as we know, judges' races are normally something that are way down the ballot and nobody really pays attention to. But really, this is a conversation that we're trying to have about public safety on our streets, about how we treat the bad actors on our streets, how we treat open air drug markets on our streets, and how the residents of San Francisco actually feel about what's going on. They're demanding more accountability from everyone right on down the line. And so that's why I'm running. And also I'm running to promote transparency in the courts so we understand what the judges are doing and their impact on public safety. So I want to thank you all very much and wish you a very happy holiday season.
Thank you so much. And with that,
Sure.
We're closing this interview.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
So we are moving along. The next person that we are going to be interviewing, or the next candidates that we're going to be interviewing, are candidates for Superior Court Judge seat number 3. And we have 2 candidates. The first person that we are going to be interviewing is Mr. Patrick Thompson. Mr. Patrick? Mr. Thompson, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you and we can see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Let me tell you how the process is going to be working. You will have 2 minutes to do opening statement, 5 minutes for questions and answers. It's 5 minutes for your answers to the questions that you will be asked. And you will have 1 minute to do closing. And with that, why don't you start us with your opening remarks?
Well, thank you very much.
Before you start, sorry, actually, Executive Garcia will let you know when your time is coming up, and he'll have a piece of paper just so you can be on the lookout for that. So go ahead and start.
Who has the piece of paper, just so I can? Great, thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you. I am delighted to share a little bit about what I've done in San Francisco over the past 30 years and why I enjoy serving as a San Francisco Superior Court judge representing you. I really very strongly believe that well-run courts are the foundation for a safer San Francisco. It's why I run my courtroom by the book. I focus on the law and never politics. And I require everyone to follow the law, to create an environment for respect for the law, the courts, and respect for each other. A little about my background. I went to the University of Michigan, then Harvard Law School, and came out here for the weather. And I worked in a large law firm on complex civil cases for a long time. And then while I was doing that, I served in the community on a number of large boards, including I chaired the board of California Pacific Medical Center, Grace Cathedral, and was on the executive committee of the American Conservatory Theater, and then was appointed by Governor Newsom to my current post in March 2022. I understand some of the issues that have been raised about crime. I've experienced crime in the city. I've lived and worked here for 30 years. And I believe that the way we uplift our community is through absolute fairness before the law. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. And I also look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we're going to be opening up the floor for questions. And you can write your name on stack or raise your hand. And I see Co-Chair Barry. Go ahead and lead us with your questions.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Thank you so much, Your Honor, for joining us this morning. Still this morning. My question is this. During the pandemic, I noticed crime seemed to go up a little bit, and a lot of people blame the district attorney, and then that blame has now shifted to the judges. And my question is that I've heard about the California Supreme Court's Humphrey decision, which affected rules for cash bail. As a Superior Court judge, do you have full discretion to decide which defendants can be detained pending pretrial or pending trial period, or are there restrictions or rules you need to follow?
Thank you, Ms. Berry, for your question. The restrictions are the rule of law. With serious and violent offenses, the legislature has carved out a set of standards, but for the vast majority of crimes, which consist of almost every felony, including the drug offenses or the broken glass that people hate when they see that, all those are bound by the Humphreys decision, where we are obligated to look at less restrictive measures to ensure in evaluating whether or not someone's likely to reoffend pending trial or whether they are likely to return to court. One of the things that the public's probably not aware of is that we have a public safety assessment tool, and that tool is not binding, but it provides us some context and additional information to help us filter whether or not this person poses a recidivism risk, to help in making those decisions. In my current role, I rarely make those kinds of detention decisions because they're usually made at arraignment. But I hope that answers your question, that we are really restricted because if you think about it from my perspective, I'm a by the book person, so I apply the law. So I don't think I have absolute discretion in anything.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so much. Next is Member Tung.
Good morning, Judge Thompson. It's nice to see you this morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to ask you if there was anything that you wanted to say about any kind of public criticism that has been levied against you, and as an opportunity to either explain what you can with respect to the judicial canons, or if you're not able to, then that's fine as well.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Tung. I mean, one of the public criticisms has been that it first appeared in a poster in the Mission District, the mystery flyers. And that person, two of the times that person was released, it was a situation where that person was released before I was even on the bench. The person I remember was a young Latino who was presented to me under what was called primary caregiver diversion. In that case, the district attorney and the defense counsel came to me with a proposal. The district attorney's office did not object to the primary caregiver diversion, and I granted that. And she has been performing under the terms that were agreed to by both of those parties. And so I don't think it's really a fair criticism to say I just released this person and it was over the objection of the district attorney's office. The second example was someone who who reoffended, and that person was outside the California Highway Patrol with a machete and an enormous amount of fentanyl. When that person appeared before me, it was a dynamic where it was the district attorney's office wasn't prepared to proceed with the preliminary hearing in my department. So I had two options: either dismiss the case or release the person. The district attorney's office in that case did not object to release because it allowed for us to protect the ability of the prosecution to proceed with the case in due course. But under those circumstances, I had to release the person. When the person did not come back to court, I issued a bench warrant for that person's arrest. And in the third instance, there was a case where a motion to detain was brought, and that public safety assessment that I referred to, and that was when I was on the bench for probably 4 months. There was a motion to detain, but there was a less restrictive alternative presented by the defense. And the public safety assessment in that instance had a recommendation. I imposed conditions that were stricter than what was in the public safety assessment. And that person has not reoffended. That person has returned to court. He's still awaiting trial, but he's returned to court before at least 4 other judges, none of whom have remanded him to custody. And that, I think, is an indication of the soundness of the judgment, because he's performing as you would expect and want someone who's out on bail.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I apologize to member Co-Chair Barry. I did not see your question as a follow-up questions when you asked your question. So I yield you the floor for you to follow up, to ask your follow-up questions.
No worries. Your Honor, thank you. I wanted to also ask you, of course, criminal court and civil court is 2 different worlds. And for someone that doesn't have experience in criminal court, I have concerns. So could you tell us, as a new judge, how are you trained to preside in a criminal court?
Thank you for the question. Well, one of the things that I described in terms of my legal practice was it was about practice and in a lifelong learning. During the period of time I was an attorney, I practiced in a broad range of areas. When I first came to the court, I was in traffic court. And that was where I was in 2022, but I had the opportunity to go to a number of different courts to sit in and be mentored by judges. I also have had 4 full weeks of additional training. That included primary assignment training in criminal. It included new judges orientation and also a 2-week judges college, all of which are designed to give me formalized training as well as on-the-job training for mentors who operate within our courts to help guide me to ensure that in my current assignment, also as preliminary hearings, we're subject to a lot more checks than I would if I were in felony trials.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so much. Moises, how much time do we have?
12 seconds.
12 seconds. Mr. Grimes, do you want to ask your question? We only have 12 seconds. I know before I allotted more time, and that was because there were 5 members who wanted to ask questions, but it's up to you.
I'll hold off. The judge seems to be more than willing to talk to people, so I will try and reach him and ask him a question then.
All right, thank you so much. With that, Honorable Thompson, the floor is yours to do closing statements, and you have 1 minute.
Well, thank you. And I do welcome any additional questions. Please feel free to reach me. I am open and accessible in that way because I view my job as really serving the community. I know that there have been a lot of concerns that have been expressed about safety in our community. I really appreciate those concerns. I think they're genuine and they're appreciated. I stand by my view that having well-run courts with independent, impartial judges is the best way to ensure a safer community. This is the community in which I live and I work, and I love our community. And if you are looking for a candidate who's going to embody the values that you have as the DCCC and me as a resident of this city, I really would appreciate your vote in support to return me. And I have people like the endorsement of Sheriff Miyamoto because he too believes in the safety of San Francisco. Our views are aligned. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you going through this process of vetting all of us to serve the people of San Francisco.
Thank you so much. And we will be in contact with you once this body makes this decision on December 13th. Thank you. So Moises, do we have the next person?
Yes, bringing up Jean Rowland right now.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Good morning, Mrs. Rowland.
Good morning, how are you?
Pretty good. Thank you for joining us this afternoon now. I'm going to walk you through the process. You may have already heard it, but I like to ensure that we're all on the same page, especially if you're just joining us now. You are going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then you're going to have 5 minutes to answer the questions that will be asked from the floor. And after those questions, you're going to have 1 minute to do a closing statement. So with that, lead us with your opening statement. And before you start, Moises, our executive director, Mr. Garcia, he will be providing you the time. So when you have 30 seconds or 60 seconds with a piece of paper, he's going to raise on his, he's going to raise the paper so you can see how much time you have. So with that, yeah, lead us with your closing statement.
Great, thank you for inviting me here. So I'm a veteran prosecutor and I've been with the DA's office for 23 years. I started in the misdemeanor unit and I worked through almost all the units in the office, including domestic violence, stalking, elder abuse, juvenile. I'm currently the head of the general felony trial unit, where I see the majority of the felony crimes that impact our city, and I see how they play out in the courtrooms. I'm running for Superior Court Judge because we need a change in San Francisco, and that change has to include the courts. But let me tell you first about who I am. I was born in Korea. My parents came to America when I was 1 year old, and they worked hard every single day to build a new life for our family. I grew up here. I went to West Portal Lutheran. I went to Lowell High School. My children go to schools in San Francisco where we're deeply embedded in the community. But this is not the same city that I remember growing up. My mother is afraid to walk the streets by herself. My heart drops every time my child wants to take the bus or if my son wants to walk 5 blocks to the candy store. And I know I'm not alone in those feelings. When we get to the point of fear, something is wrong. Something needs to change. As a prosecutor, I learned that it is important to protect the defendant's rights, but it's also important to hear the victim's voices. Judges need to balance the rights of everyone who touched the system. Judges need to balance public safety, accountability, and compassion. And those are the qualities that I have and will bring with me to the bench. I'm here asking for your endorsement for my candidacy, Superior Court Judge.
Thank you so much. And I am opening the floor for questions. Again, you can write your name on stack or raise your hand. And I saw Member Tung who put her name on stack, then Member Barry and Mr. Member Cohen proxy, Mr. Grun. So with that, Member Tung, lead us with your question.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Ms. Rowland. I wanted to ask you, and I did ask the same question of the other challenger, why should the people of San Francisco vote for you instead of the incumbent that you are running against?
Well, I would say that I love the city. I am invested in San Francisco, not only because I grew up here, but my children also uh, go to school here, and we are in the community itself. I have gone. I am a lifelong public servant. I've been with the district attorney's office for 23 years. I see what is going on the streets and in the courtrooms, and I review thousands of cases for the past 2 decades now. So I have been weighing the evidence. I talk to the people who are involved in these cases, and I make tough, hard decisions every day. I mean, these are the qualities that we would want at the judicial level.
Thank you so much. Member Co-Chair Berry.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. I have two questions for Mrs. Rowland. Your boss, District Attorney Jenkins, and let me let you know that I'm speaking from a place of formerly homeless. I was homeless for 3 years. But your boss, District Attorney Jenkins, recently said publicly that unhoused people have to be made to be uncomfortable. This follows many more controversies, including her widely condemned failure to charge the killer of Banco Brown and the explosive lawsuit accusing her of retaliating against a police inspector working in the office. Will you condemn DA Jenkins for her failures? And if not, how can we trust you to be a fair and impartial judge that will stand up to DA Jenkins when the law requires it?
I don't think that I can take a stance on whether or not I would denounce what Brooke Jenkins is doing. I can say that if I were to become a judge, I am bound to follow the laws. I mean, that is something that I feel very strongly about. I've taken an oath to uphold the laws of California, and I do that as a DA every single day. I know that I have spent the last 2 decades upholding that law with integrity, and I know that every time I appear in front of a judge, I take that oath seriously. If there ever is a time when cases do come in front of me and there are positions that need to be made, I know that as a judge, I will review the evidence and I will listen to the arguments of the attorneys, the defense, the prosecutor, and I also want to hear from the victims. So there are so many people who are touched by the system, and there are so many people who are impacted by every decision that is made in these courtrooms. And I'm well aware of how much impact that every decision in a courtroom has on a defendant, on a victim, on the families of the defendants, of the victims, and also the public. So in my capacity as a judge, I will be fair and I will be impartial. And I want to give everybody an equal and equitable opportunity to have a voice in that courtroom.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, do you believe that Governor Newsom made a mistake in appointing Judge Thompson? And why did you decide to run against a sitting judge rather than waiting for an open seat?
So I don't know if I can quite answer that first question because I do believe in the judicial canons. I want to promote confidence in the bench. I admire the bench. I trust and admire many of the judges who are there. So I don't want to say anything that would be negatively impacting any member of that bench. I believe it's important that the public has and keeps the trust for the judges, and that's important to me.
So why did you choose Judge Thompson? He's only been there 18 months.
Well, I think that that is also reasons I cannot actually go into because of the judicial canons. but I can say that I have the experience to be able to walk into this position, to walk into this judgeship. And I have the experience not only as a prosecutor, but also as a mother, as a person who has family in the city. And I am just dedicated to doing the job that is best for San Francisco, as I have done in the last 23 years as a district attorney in San Francisco. But I cannot actually answer specifically why it would be Judge Thompson. But I think because he has been on the bench for less than 2 years, and if you look at our experiences, you'll be able to see or judge for yourself what our qualifications are and what we can bring to this community.
All right, thank you so much. Member Mayor Berry, I am going to call other members just so we can have equitable voices. Member Cohen's proxy, Mr. Grime.
Thanks, Ibanez. It hasn't switched yet. Ms. Rowland, I too am a resident here in San Francisco. I've lived here now for 43 years. I was born here, and West Porter Lutheran School was one of my competitors going to school here in San Francisco. So we do have something in common. But you had mentioned that you have to, as a DA, you've had to make tough, hard decisions. As a judge, how will you be making those tough, hard decisions more equitable, considering the current state that our city is in? We have snatch and grabs. Our retail district is desolate. People feel that they can't be safe in their own homes because of, I guess you might say, social economics. How can you mix? Well, how can you make decisions that are fair and equitable considering all of this?
I think that San Francisco faces many challenges right now. And I think the way that we have to do is we look at accountability. And when I say accountability takes many different forms. It's not just about holding the defendant accountable. I mean, like holding everyone who touches the system accountable. I want to hold prosecutors accountable to make sure that they are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. They're working up those cases, that they are giving all the discovery to the defense. We want a fair trial for the defendant. We need to hold the defense attorney accountable to make sure that they are also doing their job, that they're doing the best in representing their client, that they are conveying offers to their clients. I want to hold the programs accountable as well, in order to actually look and see a viable way to change what we are doing. I think that we need to have programs who are engaging and interacting with the defendants so that we can actually address those underlying issues and prevent reoffenders, right? We want to reduce the recidivism rate. And I truly believe that one of the ways we can do that is by treating the underlying issues that we see every day. And in terms of businesses.
Ms. Rowland,
Okay.
time is up, sorry.
No.
Sorry about that.
I was enjoying her answer, but her time's up. Okay.
Yes,
Member, make a motion to extend the time for this candidate for 2 more minutes. I have at least 2 questions. One is brief, and I see Member Galata or Vice Chair Galata also has a question.
I second it.
Yeah, actually, I was going to propose that, and thank you for reading my mind, I guess. Anyways, so yes, I absolutely accept that motion. So the motion is to extend the time to 2 extra minutes. I would ask members to be brief on your questions because I know we have to move along for the measure interviews. But again, I motion and it was second. And should we do it by acclamation? So let's move on. So we have 2 more minutes for questions, to answer questions. So I have 2 members who have their hands up, and first member Lacroix and then member Galata. We'll be asking those questions in that order. So,
Excuse me, Member Ibanez.
yes.
Will Ms. Rowland get to finish answering my question, or?
Yeah, she can finish. Let's give you, I would say, 15 seconds.
10, 15 seconds.
Yeah, let's give her 15 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's of the 2 minutes that we have. Thank you so much.
I will speak quickly as possible. So I think it's also important to work with the businesses, and in order to bring the businesses back, or in order to have businesses stay, I think it's important that the public and these businesses regain trust that San Francisco is a safer place. And I can give you examples where I have actually worked with like Walgreens in terms of trying to build a restorative justice program so that we can have healing done for the victims and the businesses, and be able to engage with the offenders who are committing these crimes, because that's how we can regain trust back into our community.
Thank you so much. With that, I will let member Lacrosse ask her question.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rowland. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I have, like I said, I have 2 questions. One is a little briefer than the next. The first is, so in your questionnaire and in your time before us, you mentioned quite a bit about fairness, equity, accountability, and I think a bit on transparency. I just wanted to know, like, what does that specifically look like for you if elected to this position as judge? And if you can provide an example or 2 of, what that would look like, something tangible that you would do if elected into this role.
Give you an example of what I have done in the past. So I was actually the head of the juvenile division for 8 years. And I can tell you that when we look at equitable, and we look at transparency, we look at accountability, right? I created the restorative justice program in our office, and I created it because I felt like there had to be a way to connect offenders and victims, because the impact that offenders have on victims, they just don't quite understand that until they are actually speaking with the people that they are harming. And that has been extremely successful, where once they are able to actually understand what their actions are doing, I think it has its effect on them, and they change the way that they're thinking. And that is something that's important. I've actually gone and spoken to offenders with their attorneys, because I think it's important that we hear their voices. And that was something that I always felt was missing as a DA. We don't get to hear the voice from the offender personally. And I think as a judge, you're in this great position where you get to actually hear from the offender and hear it in their voice if their attorney allows them to. And having everyone's voice heard is something that we need in the court system so that we can move in a better direction.
And for the sake of time, I'll just ask this as like a yes or no question. Over the course of your legal career, have you participated with the Bar Association's Justice and Diversity Center?
So no, I have not. I have not been able to do that in my capacity as a district attorney.
So thank you so much. Executive Director Garcia, we used our 2 minutes up, correct?
Correct.
I hate not to allow member Galata to ask his question if this body allows him to ask his question, and give a 30-second to the clock. I know we gave you more time to answer the question that Mr. Graham had when you were wrapping it up. So I want to give member Galata the time to ask his question, and then 30 seconds to answer. So with that, if that's okay with this body, I will do that. So go ahead, Member Galata.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Thank you, colleagues, for just the additional time. Thank you, Ms. Rowland, for being here. You mentioned in your questionnaire, I think your answer to our last question about the importance of the impartiality of the judiciary, and that it should not be influenced by perceptions of wider public opinion. I also saw that you were endorsed by a leader of Stop Crime SF, an organization that has very strong opinions about the role of the judiciary. We also heard today from two incumbent judges about their track records, which demonstrate on all accounts a commitment to the fair implementation of the law. So my question is, what would you do differently? And what are the specific issues you see with your opponent's record? And do you think there's a problem with the impartiality of the judiciary today?
So you have 30 seconds to answer this question.
I think that the judges have discretion. And I don't think that the judiciary should be swayed by the public opinions that are out there. I honestly do believe that the judges need to look at what is in front of them. Every single individual that comes in front of them deserves the opportunity to present their case as they want to, and they should, because there is no cookie cutter defendant. I've never seen that. Everybody has their individual unique life experiences, and all of that needs to be taken into consideration. I want to hear from the defense attorneys who are wonderful advocates in promoting what their clients have gone through. I want to hear from the prosecutor who will, voice the victim's concerns. So I honestly believe that public safety is universal and it's across the board. And I don't think public safety is something that is a public opinion type issue.
Right, thank you so much. And with that, we close this interview, and now you have 1 minute to make a closing statement. And again, Executive Director Garcia will keep time, and he will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I am a lifelong public servant. I spent 23 years being a voice for victims and advocating for public safety in the district attorney's office. I've reviewed thousands of cases, and I've weighed the evidence, and I've talked to people, and I've made hard, tough decisions. We need judges who have experience, who are qualified, and are willing to learn the law. We need judges who respect every person who enters their courtroom. We need judges to balance public safety with the rights of all involved in the system. People should not fear walking down our streets or taking the bus. I've dedicated my life as a public servant to San Francisco, and I want to continue that service as a judge in the city where I grew up in. My name is Jean Myungjin Rowland, and I am asking for your endorsement for my candidacy for a Superior Court judge. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our interviews. And member Executive Director Garcia will be in touch after December the 13th when we make a decision on who we will be endorsing. So once again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So that concludes our interviews of Superior Court candidates who are running for two seats, for seat number 1, seat number 2, and seat 13. So thank you so much. With that, we're going to be moving, and I don't know how much time we have, Executive Director Garcia, to do the interviews for the issues, which we now transfer to Chair Lee. Yeah, love it.
Thank you, Committee Chair Ibanez. I really appreciate all the work that you and Co-Chair Barry have put into the endorsements process for the judges' seats. So again, much appreciated. And thank you so much, Executive Director Garcia. I am Lee Levitt. I am the committee chair for the Issues and Resolutions Committee, also joined here by committee member Galata. And I'll run through a bit about our process, as it is different than that for judicial candidates. we are looking at ballot measures going to the March 2024 primary elections. We will be holding interviews for 6 out of the 7 measures. And in order to conduct these interviews, we had a period where the ballot measure campaigns reached out to be part of the endorsement interview process. And after that, our ED Garcia contacted the sponsors of the active measures to invite them to provide a representative. So we tried to reach out through the sources that we have primarily as of elections. So as the election site does not have information about the opposition campaigns, our ED also reached out to SFDCCC members, DSCC delegates from San Francisco, the SF Democratic clubs, and campaign consultants to really try to round this out, asking for assistance to find these representatives to speak today. And as in past years, the measures may not have active opponents. The only ballot measure where we were unable to confirm a proponent was for the ethics reform measure. So Michael Canning, who's the acting policy and legislative affairs manager, confirmed to the best of his knowledge, there is no formal campaign for the Ethics Commission's ballot measure. And then the officers and the staff themselves are prohibited from engaging in political activity on behalf of the measure. And to clarify it, it's all depends on when these measures officially are going to be on the ballot. So at that point, whoever's sponsoring the measures and putting it on the ballot need to step back if they are officials in some capacity in the city and county of San Francisco. So please note that the commission is going to be submitting a ballot argument for the voter information pamphlet and publishing some additional FAQ materials to provide more information about that measure. So a couple things about the deadlines. The deadline for submission of local ballot measures to SF elections was December 1st for the last of those types of ballot measures. So the ones that you have before us today have all qualified for March 5th, 2024. And there were no district measures submitted before their December 8th deadline for college or school district measures, nor were there any initiative petitions with the requisite number of voter signatures that qualified for the March 5th election. Okay, all that said, the interview process is as follows. So each of the campaign speakers or the opponents has 90 seconds for introductory remarks, stating their position in support or opposition, and then Moises will give a 30-second signal of time remaining. And then we'll take stack, as we did previously, in order for members here to ask questions of the representatives. And the speakers will have 3 minutes total to respond to the questions. And as before, the members' questions themselves will not be timed. I think there will be a minute and a half, a minute, and a 30-second signal from ED Garcia. And please do note that our speakers do include city leaders who are here in their non-government capacity, as mentioned, since the ballot measures are now officially on the ballot. So we really want to respect that. And finally, the next steps is that the DCCC will convene on December 13th at the Milton Marks Auditorium to actually vote on the endorsements for both the Superior Court judge races and for these ballot measures going to March 2024. Okay, so without further ado, let me put the list of the ballot measures we are hearing today into the chat. And then if we can have Aaron Peskin, looks like he is there. I will just call out the name that's in the ballot simplification. The committee has done their work, and so the names are often a little different. They're all kind of mundane, but you will hear more as each of our speakers describes these measures. So this is a bond measure for an affordable housing bond. And Aaron Peskin, please take it away.
Thank you, members of the Issues Committee of the DCCC. My name is Aaron Peskin. here on behalf of the March 2024 Affordable Housing Bond. Hopefully this will be easier and less controversial than your candidate interviews. And let me start by saying that this is not controversial at City Hall. It is not only endorsed by all 11 members of the board, but the initiative is co-sponsored by all 11 members of the board and the mayor. It is one of an ongoing series of affordable housing bonds, the last one being in 2019, the one before that in 2015. This is $300 million for the building of and rehabilitation of affordable housing in San Francisco. It will help create 1,500 units for seniors, for first responders, for low-income individuals, and 30 million of the 300 is for housing for survivors of domestic violence, which San Francisco has a great lack of. It will not result in any tax increases or rent increases. It includes provisions as existed in previous bonds for accountability with a oversight by a citizens oversight committee, and will help the city and county of San Francisco meet its state mandated affordable housing goals, which include some 46,598 units by 2031. It is supported by the affordable housing development community, by various unions, and I hope we'll get the DCCC endorsement on December 13th, and I am available to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Member Barry has a question, and I'll add myself to the stack after that.
I know you're not in your official capacity, but hello, President. Got to give you your respects. My question is, in light of the recent article Monday that came out that there has been more radioactive markers found at the Hunters Point shipyard, with this bond, does it detail yet where these affordable housing units will be?
So the answer is that the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development actually has a whole bunch of projects that are in the pipeline, and this would go to fund those existing projects. The project at the shipyard actually, while it requires the development of affordable housing as part of the development agreement that was entered into many years ago, it is not done with bond subsidy. It is done actually as a result of the agreement that Lennar, now 5 Point, came to with the city. So it won't go into the Lennar project.
Thank you.
I was going to go next, but I can defer to Kurt Grimes.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. It's nice to see you.
Likewise.
Saturday afternoon. I'm concerned with something like this, with building and construction that's always going on in San Francisco. Will we be using local and hyper-local contractors for stuff like this?
Really good question. And the answer is, it is subject to all of our existing prevailing wage laws in the city and county of San Francisco. And I should have said at the beginning, there is no organized opposition to this. And I am hopeful that we will also very soon get the endorsement of the San Francisco Labor Council.
Great.
Thank you. So my question is with regard to the property taxes. You mentioned that this new bond would not raise property taxes for property owners. Can you explain how that is, especially in terms of the pass-throughs?
And let me choose my words very, very carefully. What I said is it will not raise property tax rates. So general obligation bonds allow the city and county of San Francisco to sell bonds, get cash, and that debt is paid for through property taxes. In 2006, the city and county of San Francisco imposed a constraint on itself. And that constraint was that we would not issue any more debt than we retired old debt from previous bonds. And so when the voters approved this authorization for the city to sell, in this case, up to $300 million of bonds, we don't sell them all at the same time. We retire bonds that were sold for street resurfacing or for the building of General Hospital. And we take, as we retire debt, we issue new debt. As a result, since 2006, our marginal property tax rate of approximately 0.112% has not gone up. Now, that does not mean that your property taxes don't go up, because every year your property, at least in San Francisco, becomes more valuable. So your property taxes may go up a little bit, but your property tax rate remains the same. And this bond is subject to that self-imposed constraint. And we are also, this gets very policy complicated, but also that means that landlords cannot pass through anything to tenants.
Thank you so much for clarifying that last point. And a question from Vice Chair Galata.
Thank you. It's a quick one. Thank you, President Peskin, for all of your leadership and bringing this forward. My question is just why 300 million or only 300 million? Is it because of that limitation that we're up against? You know, because we always need more money. So I'm assuming that was as much as we could
Yes,
get.
if I could have done $1 billion, I would have done $1 billion, because the need is much larger than this will pay for. This is about for 1,500 units. And the answer is that a number of years ago, also about in the same time frame, the city of San Francisco actually finally got its act together, and we created a capital plan. And we, you know, so for instance, the next general obligation bond will be for the public health department, and the general obligation bond after that will be for the SFMTA. And so we created a schedule and tried to figure out how not to raise property taxes. And that's why this is 300 million. I wish it were larger, but to live within that plan constraint, that's how we got to 300.
Thank you so much. Looks like we're close to time, and I don't see any other questions. Really appreciate you coming on, Aaron Peskin, and now you can return to your official capacity after leaving our meeting.
Thanks for spending your Saturday doing this. I did it for 6 years as a member of the DCCC, so I appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much for your time.
Take care.
So next up, we have a charter amendment, and that's police officer staffing levels conditioned on future funding. And do we have, yes, we have Rudy Gonzalez here to speak with us. So what we have is 90 seconds for you to make remarks as the representative for the campaign. Then we'll have member questions, and you have a total of 3 minutes to respond to those questions, not including that question time. And there is no concluding statement as there have been with candidates. But if things get controversial, our members can decide that we want to stay here for the rest of our afternoon.
I defer to you on that, Chair.
Take it away.
Thank you for the time and the opportunity to address you. Rudy Gonzalez with the San Francisco Building and Construction Trades, and I'm also a co-chair alongside of SCIU and IFPTE of the Public Employees Committee unions. I'm here representing the committee to restore police staffing and public safety in San Francisco. As the principal officer of the campaign, there's no question that we face serious public safety challenges, and they've been exacerbated by police officer shortages and vacancies across public safety departments in critical jobs. The Board of Supervisors has approved this March ballot initiative as charter amendment to help San Francisco responsibly and transparently address these issues while we pursue a comprehensive public safety strategy to reduce crime overall. The controller's analysis, and I look forward to getting into this more in the question and answers, says, quote, this would cost about $2 million in the first fiscal year for the city, increasing by approximately $18 million annually over the next 4 years, and increasing costs cumulative to a total of $200 million during this period. It was introduced by somebody else on the Board of Supervisors, and despite some of the what I'll call Fox News, repeat it until it becomes your truth, talking points. This has now been taken over by responsible actors for public safety, and we are going to make sure that it is transparent and that, of course, we have a way to pay for true public safety in San Francisco. I welcome your questions.
I see Member Barry is in stack, and I see Member Lee, and I'll put myself in stack after that.
I'll defer to Lee.
Member Lee.
Sure, if that's all right. Rudy, thank you so much for being with us here today on a Saturday. So I say this as having led this process as BART board president this past year, but the BART board, we actually did pass police raises back a few months ago. It was a unanimous decision by the board, but we were seeing the vacancy issue, and we were having trouble keeping up because trans cops have historically just been paid less than your typical municipal cop. But I think, at the end of the day, it really feels like this is becoming a bit of an arms race with each police department trying to pay their officers a bit more as a way to try to fill vacancies in a world where the workforce is simply dwindling. People who are my age and younger do not want to become cops. And I have a lot of concerns that this is not really rethinking the way that we are trying to do policing. Instead, we're just hoping that paying cops more will somehow fill these vacancies. So can you sort of talk to that and, as someone who's a proponent, what your vision of where do we go from here? Because we just can't get to a point where each police department is just simply increasing salaries and trying to fill vacancies that way.
Thank you, Member Lee. I appreciate the question, the opportunity to respond. So first, I'll say that we have a fully funded police department in San Francisco. And to your point, we have a problem recruiting people. And I think we have a problem engaging community and really looking at how we create opportunities for local folks to get into the career and to shape the future and the vision of it for themselves in their neighborhoods. This charter amendment brings transparency, and frankly, it was initially proposed by some folks without transparency and without an ability to implement it. And what we're looking to do is to send a strong message that we're going to restore the minimum staffing levels, and rather than some of the headlines of $75,000 bonuses for police officers and poaching them, as you said, from other agencies, this would set aside a dedicated fund to look at those recruitment efforts, to look at hiring, development, and other marketing campaigns that they can do. But importantly, it requires the city to actually identify a stable funding stream. And that can be from existing funding and existing tax. And if they don't, would require that they actually explore future revenue. So from a perspective of what does policing look like, I think we're going to have to look to the Board of Supervisors. We're going to have to look to community stakeholders. We're going to have to look to people who are in law enforcement and outside of law enforcement to really shape that. But what we can't allow to happen is that these kind of wolf in sheep's clothing proposals get put out that would actually pit us against our own public safety interests. And the moral of this story is that we have to invest in public safety staffing. We have to do it for police staffing right now. And then we need to continue that conversation because the mayor's administration has failed to actually implement their policies. The mayor's administration has failed to recruit police officers despite repeated attempts to fund. And so we have to take this to the voters, and we have to institutionalize and memorialize the staffing levels, and then roll up our sleeves and think about how do we fund the 40% vacancies in 911, right? Because we know as public employee labor leaders that there's a lot that goes into public safety. There are civilians that are factored into this, homeless outreach workers, medics, right? Behavioral health clinicians, all of which this mayor's administration has failed to staff. So we think this is an important first step toward addressing comprehensive public safety.
Member Barry.
Thank you. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to follow this, and I remember Supervisor Safai making an amendment to it and whatnot. Is it true that this will, if it passes, it'll put police funding at a higher priority than other departments if staffing levels aren't met? And also, is there any oversight being done on the recruit department of the police department? Because myself, a former correctional officer, I've applied to police department in Oakland, sheriff's department in San Francisco. And I know from on the inside, people don't overtime. So much money has been thrown at recruiting. How much more money can we be sending to the police with the ironic number of 2 million, which was cut from the Office of Reparations?
So I'll go backwards. The proposal that you referenced to cut the Office of Reparations comes right out of the same mayor's administration who's failed to fund this, and the same administration that's actually failed to increase the marketing and recruitment budget. It's been stagnant for about 4 to 5 years at $250,000. This would require that there be a calculation done every year to say, how far off are we from minimum staffing? Are we 50, 75, 100, 300, and then put aside a $75,000 earmark essentially. And that's where that 2 million could come from in the first fiscal year. And that would be set aside to deal with the marketing, recruitment, all the kind of excitement, as I say, that we need to create around these good careers for our community. Now, nothing in the charter amendment changes the current oversight and accountability process, whether it's from the chief of police, the mayor, the city administrator, or the police commission themselves, and even the board of supervisors in their oversight capacity. We're not proposing to change that oversight piece at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. How much time do we have left, Edie Garcia?
The time is expired.
Okay, great. Yeah, I yield my time. Thank you so much, Rudy Gonzalez, for speaking on behalf of the campaign. Thank you. So on to the next, and you should all find the list of the ballot measures in the chat if you're on this webinar. So our next one is going to be an initiative ordinance on police department policies and procedures. And we have Matt Dorsey here. Again, we have city leaders who are here in their non-government capacity. So you will have 1.5 minutes to provide your remarks as a proponent for this measure. And then there will be 3 minutes to respond to questions from the members, and the time used to ask those questions does not count. So you will have 3 entire minutes. Would you like to have your camera on, or are you in a place where it's difficult?
My apologies. How is everybody?
Don't worry. Yeah.
Great.
Good to see you. Thank you.
I'm a little hoarse. I'm home with a cold, so I'm grateful this is on Zoom today, so I'm not getting everybody sick. I want to also start by just saying, as a former DCCC member and somebody who was part of the Issues Committee, I appreciate what you're doing today on a nice Saturday afternoon to serve our party and our city. I'm first going to be speaking about Safer San Francisco. Mayor London Breed proposed the Safer San Francisco ballot measure, which I am supporting. And the idea of this is that it will get more officers on the street and enable them to be more effective in protecting public safety and addressing public safety challenges. And that's especially important, I think, in a time of historic levels of police understaffing. We just heard, I know, from Rudy Gonzalez. I will be fiercely opposed to the cop tax scheme that Mr. Gonzalez talked about. Of course, in my view, this is something that hijacked a measure that I've been working on with the mayor for much of the year. But short of a more workable plan to get police staffing levels right in San Francisco, we do need to make needed progress on public safety challenges. And we can do that by reforming policies that in many ways are outdated and onerous. So this measure aims to fix practices that right now commit too much police time to bureaucracy and not enough to public safety. So Safer San Francisco will make needed progress in a few ways. It'll first improve accountability for the police commission by setting community engagement standards for police commissioners to make major changes to police operations. Second, it'll improve efficiencies in the department, and it'll require target maximums for administrative work so that it accounts for no more than 20% of the police officers on duty time. It can reduce redundancies in record keeping and reporting, and it can do that by allowing body camera footage to be part of police reports. And the third thing that to me is most important is it'll improve the effectiveness of the police department, and it'll do so in a couple of different ways. One, it'll provide more latitude for police officers to engage in vehicle pursuits when there's probable cause that a violent felony or violent misdemeanor has occurred. And the second, and in my view most important, is that it will streamline the police department's adoption of surveillance technology which right now is subject to an onerous standard that is uniquely difficult in California counties, and in many ways has made San Francisco into a small soft target. By the way, I'm not sure. I just realized I could put this on gallery. So have I run over my time?
You're good.
Okay. So that's what I'm happy to take any questions.
Sure. I thought I had seen Member Lee's hand, but now I'm seeing Member Berry's. Member Berry?
Hi, Supervisor Dorsey.
Hey.
Could you reiterate and explain a little bit more about the impact this ballot measure would have on the police commission?
Sure. So the idea is that it will require the police commission to have, let me just bring up the actual ordinance. It will create a community engagement process so that the police commission, before there is more community outreach and engagement with communities before there are major operational changes to how things are done. Now, one of the things that I just want to mention in the context of this is, I think people know that before I got to the Board of Supervisors, I was on the police department command staff as a civilian member for 2 years. But before that, I worked for 14 years in the city attorney's office. And it's a lot of the reason that I wanted to go work for Bill Scott was because I was around for Mario Woods and many of the officer-involved shootings and excessive forces when the police department was having a lot of challenges. There was a lot of work that the police department did under the leadership of Bill Scott to implement 272 recommendations in line with President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. So in that process, I think there are some things where it has created inefficiencies. So I think what the mayor did, working closely with Chief Scott, was to just hone ways that we're still abiding by the principles of 21st century policing, but minimizing the kind of administrative work and paperwork and eliminating redundancies. So that's one of the things that I think is an important part of this.
Okay, so my question is, now that I understand what you're saying, is that it seems like it will be more difficult for a police commission to complete the work they have to do. They are already significantly behind on reform. And I remember being part of outreach with the police commission where we worked on general orders, and we had a good turnout of community members to help with amending general orders. And then as recently as earlier this year, I believe a group graduated that it was a lot of youth that worked with the police commission on amending general orders. And are you saying it's not enough? We need more delay on working on that type of work?
Yeah, I think what the mayor feels, and what I agree with, is that there should be improvements to community engagement and outreach.
Thank you. So I see several more people with their hands in stack, and I believe next is Fiona Ma's proxy. Patrick?
Yes, thank you. So quickly, does this measure poison pill, or does the other measure poison pill? Does police staffing measure poison pill your measure, or vice versa? If one gets more, does the other one, does it invalidate the other, or could both of these conceivably become law?
Yeah, this is a separate measure from the police staffing one. I think that was it may have been the measure you just heard about from Rudy Gonzalez is a police staffing measure that is separate. It bears mentioning, I think, because in the context of police staffing, improving efficiencies is something that we need to do. In other words, what I would say is Safer San Francisco is something we need to do in addition to, rather than instead of, addressing our police staffing shortfalls. The dispute that I have on the measure that Rudy Gonzalez spoke to is, I think that was a poison pill, but I think I may have missed the cutoff. We had just got an opposition campaign up, so we may not have had the ability to do that, but I don't want to conflate the two. We can do both, or neither, or either.
I do not believe there are other hands, but I did have a question with regard to the surveillance technology. And can you speak more how the Board of Supervisors role would be changed or curtailed with this measure?
Yeah, so what it would do is it would enable the police department to use surveillance technology and then seek permission after the fact. Right now, one of the things that in Administrative Code Chapter 19B, this is the Surveillance Technology Ordinance. I think this was something that we're not quite getting right. And I think even the sponsor would acknowledge that we probably need to update some things about this. When 19B was implemented in 2019, within 60 days of operation, 100% of departments were already out of compliance. It had a very ambitious requirement for inventorying surveillance technologies. It broadly defined surveillance technology to include things like Google Analytics and MailChimp and things. For the police department, because it is already part of an oversight infrastructure within the criminal justice system that includes the public defender's office, the district attorney, the courts, the Department of Police Accountability, the police commission, I think we probably have latitude. And by the way, also, in no small part, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, because this is a criminal agency, criminal justice agency. Having the additional oversight of the Commission or the Committee on Information Technology and the Board of Supervisors is a little bit onerous at a time when we probably need to improve efficiencies for surveillance technologies using things like drones and license plate readers. So it would enable the police department to move more quickly for a period of a year and then get Board of Supervisors buy-in through the adoption of surveillance technology policies and surveillance technology annual reports, which right now are required in advance.
Thank you for clarifying. I think we're just a little over time, but wanted to let you finish that point. Great. And you are staying on.
Yep.
So a little bit more of your Saturday afternoon will be.
Oh, no problem. Okay.
Okay. So for our next measure, this is an initiative ordinance, the illegal substance dependence screening and treatment for recipients of city public assistance. And notice that these titles are a little different because they come from the ballot simplification process and may not reflect the formal language that's in the ordinance that's moving forward. So you've got same thing, minute and a half, and then 2 minutes.
Sounds good. So as you probably know, we are on pace this year, and we'll probably see in the next couple of weeks when the next overdose report comes out, we are on pace for the deadliest year for fatal drug overdoses in San Francisco history. This is increasingly due to a single drug in fentanyl that I don't think anybody who is familiar with law enforcement would have predicted would come. But there are also potently addictive and deadly drugs that are related to that are also on the way, including tranq and carfentanil and others. This ballot measure is another tool that we can use to basically introduce and perhaps expose those who are at disproportionate use to substance use disorders and fatal overdoses to treatment options that may be available and to incentivize recovery, including, by the way, medically assisted treatment and harm reduction strategies that could save lives. It would require recipients of aid under the County Adult Assistance Program, or CAP, who are believed to be dependent on drugs to be screened for substance use. It will require them to participate in appropriate substance abuse treatment where recommended. And it would provide that failure to comply with drug screening would make them ineligible for services. However, it would also enable people who are in noncompliance to access in-kind shelter for 30 days with possible exceptions or extensions to prevent an eviction. I think this is a way of balancing compassion and accountability. And I think given the deadliness of what we're facing out there with the drugs, this is an important step. It's, I don't think, a cure-all, but I think this is needed progress. It's also not unusual in California. This is what the County of Los Angeles does. And it is showing some success there. I think obviously what we're seeing and what we're up against is going to be more incremental success, but I think this is incremental success that's worse than acting.
Member Barry.
Yes, this is one of the ballot measures that concerns me the most. I'm pretty much boots on the ground in the streets and whatnot. And I talked about it with people that and are around people that are in that environment and receive services. So what I'm hearing is there'll be a lot of probably murders behind this when people don't receive their services, especially their checks. They may owe money to folks, and that could be a life or death situation. And I'm also hearing, because addiction is not always a easy thing to stop. I used to be addicted to food, but I'm not anymore, but it's not easy. And people sometimes have to do it when they're ready, and sometimes they have to repetitively make attempts to stay sober. So I'm thinking, if you take away someone's services because they don't comply, wouldn't you be increasing their depression and maybe some of the root reasons why they use in the first place?
So I think it really comes down, this is one of the issues that plays out in drug policy a lot, is whether and to what extent drug policy strategies should be something that are coercive interventions. The National Institute on Drug Abuse has a publication called Principles for Drug Addiction Treatment. It's from 2018. And I'm going to read it. It said, treatment does not need to be voluntary to be effective. Sanctions or enticements from family employment settings and or the criminal justice system can significantly increase treatment entry, retention rates, and the ultimate success of drug treatment interventions. It doesn't mean that a coercive intervention always works, but it can mean the difference between enabling something that is going to be where we're all racing the clock against the deadliest drug we've ever dealt with in terms of fentanyl. I think this is an approach that balances incentivizing with a safety net. So I think the mayor is striking the right balance in making sure that this is something where we're following the lead of some other counties where if we can, under state law, we can condition general assistance benefits on assessment, but it's not a sobriety requirement either. It's basically asking people to be assessed and to participate in a treatment program. If they choose not to avail themselves of that, I will say personally, this is something that it took me a lot of times, but in many ways, when I finally realized I did need recovery services, largely because I had been exposed to it, I knew where to go.
And won't crime go up when people no longer have their subsidies?
No, I don't know that there is, looking at the literature in this, I don't know that that is the case. I don't think, I know that it's speculative, but based on what I've seen in Los Angeles, I would say our fatal overdose rate in San Francisco is far beyond the statewide average and far beyond any other county, with the exception of there's a couple of very sparsely populated counties where an overdose in Alpine County can, send it off the charts. But among the major counties, San Francisco's overdose rate is far higher than that in Los Angeles. And it's much higher than the statewide average. So it's hard to tether it to crime rates. It may, and I don't want to say that you're wrong on that, but I would say the one thing that we can look at in terms of fatal overdose rates, which is just staggering. I mean, this is a public health calamity that we haven't faced since we have not seen anything like this in terms of the loss of life since the AIDS crisis.
Thank you. So I'm mindful that we probably have less than 30 seconds now. And we have two more questions from myself and then Member Banez. Are members okay with extending by 2 minutes?
Yeah, so moved, yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Can we do by acclamation? Okay, thank you. Great. So I have a scenario. So let's say you have a mother who is addicted, and under this measure, they are refusing treatment. Can you describe what programs would be taken away that are part of CAP that also could impact the others in that person's life? Trying to get a sense of the broader consequences beyond the individual.
So the way that it's written is that if people become ineligible, they would be able to receive a house. They would still be able to receive a housing stipend to access in-kind shelter for 30 days beyond the discontinuance of their aid, and with possible extensions to prevent evictions. So I think what the measure is attempting to do is to incentivize this without creating undue hardships. It also isn't a sobriety requirement. So there is flexibility and latitude in terms of what constitutes treatment. Remember that harm reduction is a recovery strategy. Medically assisted treatment is a recovery strategy. So I think this is something that balances compassion and accountability, and that is built into the program. This is not as coercive as it could be under state law.
And can you clarify, though, would services to that child that lives through the parent be denied?
Let's see. With a child, I think it may be the case, and I would have to actually ask Trent Orr this. The CAAP program is specifically for adults, so there's no juveniles. It may be the case. In fact, I think it is, but I can't say it with certainty. The program that the general assistance program that is mandated under state law, it's a general assistance program. It's known in San Francisco as the County Adult CAP program, the County Adult Assistance Program. So I think that if this were family assistance or juveniles, it would not be subject to this. This would only be individuals, single adults without children.
Okay, so thank you. And Member Ibanez, question.
Yes, I do. I do have a question. And I've been reading about this expert who talks about substance dependence, and you may know him, Gabor Mate, who has indicated to address the issue of substance dependence, you have to have, housing available, you have to have mental health care, you have to have medical care, and other important safety net services, and not necessarily take away services based on what I understand from this measure. Can you tell me how this measure is really going to improve the substance dependence and abuse that we have in our city? I didn't really hear you.
So I think what it would do is it would take a population that's at disproportionate risk for substance use disorders and overdoses, and would put them in an environment where they would be assessed for substance use disorder and then provided information about and an incentive to keep eligibility for program to participate in the substance use programs. It's similar to programming in Los Angeles. One of the benefits that I see of this is I'm hoping that it will also help the city do more to expand the services and treatment on demand options that we should be having out here that can rise to the moment. So that is what the idea is, and it is modeled on something that, as I said, state law allows and that Los Angeles has had some success with. Los Angeles is not without its own issues, its own struggles, but San Francisco is in a uniquely bad position with this.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So my follow-up question.
I think we're out of time. So do we want to extend by another minute?
No, I'm okay. That's okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for staying on for 2 of these ballot measures, and please enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thanks so much, and thanks for your service to our party.
Great, thanks.
Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. So we actually have 2 more ballot measures to consider, and for both of these, we have a proponent, and then we also have an opponent. So the next one is going to be the initiative ordinance, which is a real estate transfer tax exemption and office space allocation. So our proponent representative is Corey Smith. So you will have a minute and a half. Our ED Moises Garcia will give you a 30-second, till time's up. And then you'll have 3 minutes to answer questions from the members, but the question asking time does not count into that time you have for answering. And you'll also have, kind of a heads up that you'll have a minute and a half and a minute and 30 seconds. Take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Corey Smith, I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Action Coalition. We're a San Francisco-based nonprofit that does advocacy work around the state of California, trying to promote more housing at all income levels. So we think about homeless supportive housing, deed-restricted, subsidized affordable housing at a range of incomes, and market rate housing, sort of the full gambit of home options for people. And here today, because there's been a topic in San Francisco and around the country really about trying to convert underused office space into new homes. And typically when we're thinking about the types of office, it's referred to as Class B or Class C. So this is older office, typically not that large, that is just not as desirable as a lot of the new office spaces. And when you talk to builders right now, it is financially impossible to actually get housing built. And so we've talked with a lot of different people about ways that we can actually make these conversions happen. And what you've got in front of you removes one of the really significant barriers, adds a lot to the overall cost of housing. I don't think this measure is going to actually get us there entirely by itself. There's other things that have to happen. But just based on the math, if we want to see office turn into housing, we need to be passing measures like this to try to remove some of the barriers. And I think we can get, at best, about 5,000 new homes in San Francisco's oldest neighborhood. It'll be our newest neighborhood.
You. Looks like Member Berry and a Member Ibanez are on stack, and I will be on stack after that. Member Berry.
Thank you, Chair Lovett. Hi, Corey Smith. My question is this. During the pandemic, I went looking for an apartment, and I also used to be a delivery driver. So what I noticed was an abundance of vacant market rate housing throughout the city. It's like any building you go to, so many vacancies, and they bombard me with emails constantly because they're constantly searching for people to fill these units. So with your ballot measure, is there really necessary to convert these to market rate units at all? Or could it be solely for deeply affordable and even shelter use versus more condos to sell to people to invest for their futures?
Yeah, a really good question. I mean, I think a key piece to this is even at market rate prices, it is financially impossible to do this. So if we wanted to pursue a deed restricted affordable route, those rents are even lower. So it's definitely a policy path that the city could take. It would require hundreds of millions of dollars of public subsidy to do it. And so it's really just sort of a policy question there. We think that since we do have this undesirable office space, and office space vacancies is also a big conversation. It's one of the ways to try to reactivate downtown, try to make it a little bit more of a 24/7 type of neighborhood. And based on budget conversations in San Francisco and elsewhere, I personally don't see the city or the state investing the amount of money it would be needed to make these conversions. But that's totally a different policy path that we could take. This seems like kind of with where we are, if we can create new homes for folks without public subsidy, we think it's a good path going forward, in addition to things like voting yes on the bond that President Peskin spoke to earlier.
But would it be market rate homes?
Well, the city would have the ability to set requirements on that. The Board of Supervisors can still set inclusionary requirements and fee requirements and all that stuff.
Thank you. And Member Ibanez.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Corey. I have three-pronged question. Can a hotel be converted? Can a hotel be converted and enjoy this credit? And is there anything in this measure that protects the workers who will construct these conversions?
So to the first part, no, believe it is not eligible for hotels. And then second, this is not about the labor standards. It's just for the transfer tax. So it doesn't touch that at all and doesn't prohibit any other rules going into place related to that.
And the follow-up question, which is, would this measure only fund market rate housing?
Not going to fund market rate housing. It's removing a cost of what I would call a barrier to building market rate housing. The alternative is empty office space sitting there. And so it's sort of like, we think this is a better use of the space.
So I take that's a yes?
Well, it's not subsidizing anything. It's removing a cost from it.
I'm not asking for subsidizing. I'm asking this will only be funding for market rate housing.
There's no funding going towards it, though. We're not putting city dollars towards the conversions. So no is the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Corey Smith, about the mechanics. So let's say that somebody does this office to residential conversion of an older building. So as I understand, it's like a two-step process to be qualified first, but then upon the certificate of occupancy, then the developer requests an exemption certificate of the city. So have they already paid that transfer tax and then they're actually refunded the money? So kind of a question there and more.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And unfortunately, not a quick answer, but I can try to get this out. So whenever people build market rate housing, most of the time, sometimes people do hold on to it, but most of the time, as soon as the property is actually finished, the developer sells it to different investment groups. And so again, most of the time when market rate housing is finished, it then actually gets sold by the developer right away. So what this measure does, and then another key piece to this is the fact that the transfer tax is paid by the seller. So that's important to it as well. So you have an office owner right now, they sell it to a residential developer. The office owner, as the seller, pays that transfer tax. So that's still getting collected, that doesn't change. Then you have your housing developer owns it when they do the residential conversion. And there is a time limit on that as well. They can't just sit there and hold it forever. I believe it's 3 years. When the residential conversion happens, when they sell it to somebody else after it has become housing, that is the transaction in which the transfer tax is exempted. So at that point in time, they're not paying the fee. Another key piece to this, it does have a sunset after 5 years. So this is something that we're trying, and it's not necessarily the law forever.
Sorry, the measure has a sunset, or for each?
The measure has a sunset,
okay.
2030.
Great, thanks. I would have more questions, but I can reach out because I also see Kurt Grimes' hand.
Thank you. Hi, Corey. How are you this afternoon?
Doing pretty well. How you doing?
Good, good. I have 2 questions. You know, when you say older building, what are you talking about? Because San Francisco has a mix, and as we turn the century and we're getting farther and farther into the future, 2025, 2030, you know, I grew up in a house that was built in 1920. That house is now 100 years old. The Transamerica building is now 65 years old, I believe. Maybe a little bit older than that. So when you say older buildings, what are we talking about here?
Yes. So Spur and Gensler did a great report where they actually have all of the addresses of buildings that were likely for conversions. And the profile that we're typically talking about is office buildings that are at least 50 years old, that tend to be anywhere between 2 and maybe 5 stories. And it's again, class B and class C, and ABC is basically a desirability scale. Office conversions are really expensive, and this is true because of the plumbing. Like, think about how many bathrooms an office building has versus how many bathrooms a residential building has. That's actually one of the reasons why it's so difficult, and why these smaller office buildings are really the only place where it might make sense to do this conversion.
So 2 to 5 story buildings that are located throughout our city, right? Okay. The other
Aimed
thing,
at downtown, most of them are downtown.
The other thing here is, you know, San Francisco is an expensive place to live. Rent is not cheap here. In fact, if you were living on minimum wage here in San Francisco, it may be more than it is in San Mateo, but it's not going to be enough for you to live off of it here in San Francisco. Are these conversions going to be affordable for someone who's living off of minimum wage or just a cut above? Or, I mean, I'm concerned about this because you have people that have been displaced, and this may be an opportunity for them to come back.
Yeah, really good question. And I'll say from my personal experience, somebody that advocates for housing at all income levels, I can't afford market rate housing, right? I work at a nonprofit. But we do see a number of things that are true. Number one, cities that see more market rate housing construction see lower levels of displacement of low and middle income individuals. And part of that is about providing housing opportunities and housing options for everybody. The other key piece to this is in these buildings that we're talking about, it's not going to be desirable for absolutely everybody. I personally do believe that the average price point of these conversions is actually going to be a little bit lower than a standard market rate product, simply because of how they're going to have to rework the inside. But all the data shows nationally that creating more homes at all income levels, deed restricted, low income, middle income, market rate, it helps people across the entire income spectrum.
So Corey, hold on a second now. A 2-bedroom place here in San Francisco is going to cut you back $750,000. I don't have 20% down on that. I don't think anyone else on this call has $150K in their back pocket. So when you say, that's what I mean about affordability. It's a hard question to sort of come up with.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a basic fundamental question. If you believe we should be building more market rate housing, then this makes sense. And if you believe that we shouldn't, then you don't.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to do a time check. ED Garcia, do we have time for one more question?
We're over time, fortunately.
And Member Banyas, do you feel like your previous question was answered, or
No,
did you want an extension?
Just clarification, and for the record, I do want to say that the measure does say that commercial use to residential use. So in other words, the question that I had asked about hotel to be converted, basically hotels, commercial use includes hotels. So I just want to make sure that it does. So I want to make sure that for the record, that's what that means. And it does say that in the measure.
Yeah,
so it does.
Mistake on my part. I apologize, and I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for that important clarification, Member Banyas, and thank you, Corey Smith, for joining us today.
Appreciate y'all.
Great. Okay, so moving on, we are on the same ballot measure, the initiative ordinance, which is real estate transfer tax exemption and office space allocation. So we have Dean Preston speaking in his non-government capacity here in opposing this ordinance. So what we are doing is a minute and a half for your introductory remarks, and then you'll have 3 minutes to respond to questions from members here. The questions themselves will not count against your time. And if things get feisty, then we can always choose to extend the time. And so take it away.
Thank you. Sounds great. And appreciate the opportunity to speak in opposition to this very deceptive tax break for billionaires. And this measure is a classic Trojan horse, strategically framed, as we've just heard from the proponent, around office to residential conversions. The more significant part of this measure that hasn't been addressed is giving City Hall the power to amend or eliminate all transfer taxes without voter approval. The transfer tax, as you know, is paid by sellers of real estate at the time of sale. It is a progressive tax imposing higher rates on those selling higher value properties, particularly those over $10 million. It brings in about $500 million per year in normal times to the general fund of San Francisco, 200 to 300 million in the current downturn. And this provides key funding for public safety, for parks, for transit, and for affordable housing. This ballot measure would authorize the Board of Supervisors, without voter approval, to amend or repeal any aspect of the real estate transfer tax by a simple majority. And this has to be viewed in the context of billionaires' clear and publicly stated intention to flip the Board of Supervisors to a more billionaire-friendly majority so they can dismantle progressive taxes. So this measure would strip voters of the right to set tax rates on billionaires and give complete discretion instead to politicians to reduce or even eliminate our entire transfer tax. So this is deceptive measure. It has absolutely nothing to encourage affordable housing in San Francisco. And it is a serious threat, not only to funding for affordable housing, but vital neighborhood services. So I strongly urge you to oppose it and look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Member Barry is on stack, and then I'll be next.
Hi, Supervisor. Excuse me for my naivety. I do have a question about the practicality of it, and if there's other ways that this conversion of abundance of vacant buildings could be done without waiving tax for millionaires.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the board, I actually support the policy of converting excess office to residential. The Board of Supervisors has just passed a waiver of some of the impact fees already on that. We just in my committee this week passed a Mills Act exemption for the Warfield buildings to help facilitate their conversion. To your questions earlier, I mean, these are conversions to almost exclusively market rate housing. They are not going to benefit working class people in San Francisco. But at the same time, you know, we don't want office just sitting there empty either. So I think the board is receptive and has been supportive of trying to facilitate these conversions. What was done here, though, and I can't emphasize this enough, this was not a serious attempt at addressing conversions, right? Nobody was consulted. Organized labor was not consulted. The stakeholders, all the folks who wrote the transfer taxes that have passed, the affordable housing, nobody was at the table. This came out of nowhere. Instead of coming together and actually putting if there's an appetite for some targeted amendments to transfer tax, let's do it. We can do it in November, no problem. We can all come together, get that done. This was dropped out of nowhere. And the reason is, as I said, this has almost nothing to do with office to residential conversion. Like this is about giving the board the ability to do what the really rich in this town have not been able to do. They can't win at the ballot to get rid of these taxes. And so they want to give the power to the Board of Supervisors by a simple majority to just wipe these out. And that's the project. And that's why, regardless of how people feel about conversions, they should absolutely oppose this ballot measure.
Thank you for breaking it down.
Yep, my pleasure.
So I did some calculations, as this is a graduated transfer tax. It's a one-time tax. And if you have a $25 million property, then the city loses out on $1.5 million, right? And it goes up from there. So what you're sort of painting is also the consequences for a very weak pot of general funds that fund all sorts of things throughout the city. Can you describe how much the last two transfer taxes, including the one that you worked on, the Prop I measure, has brought in? So there was a 2016 transfer tax. Some of it went to Free City College, but a lot of it went back in. And then the 2020 transfer tax, marginal increases, also has brought in a significant amount.
Yeah, thanks for the question and for pointing out that this is crucial revenue for the city. It helped us prevent deficits for 3 years in a pandemic. And also it brings in all different types of revenue. The transfer tax by definition is a general fund revenue source. It cannot be legally targeted. I don't have the numbers on Prop W, the City College one broad. I do have Prop I has been about $300 million additional dollars coming in. 20% of that is baselined and goes right off the bat to fund public transit and parks. The rest of it is at the discretion. There's obviously been a big debate where we intended for these funds to be used for affordable housing, and the mayor has been resistant to that. To go one step further and not only refuse to spend some of these funds on affordable housing, but now actually propose something that threatens all of this funding, this would be absolutely devastating to the city budget. And I can't emphasize enough, this is one of the most progressive taxes we have. It is folks buying and selling $10 million plus properties. These are not working class people paying this tax. And under this measure, even for the conversions, this measure would create a situation where a billionaire company downtown doing a conversion would pay zero in tax. But if you happen to be a homeowner on the west side of San Francisco selling a $1.5 million, you're still paying the tax. You're going to pay $10,000, $12,000 at the low rate when you sell, but some billionaire company downtown is going to pay literally zero. That's just not serious policy making. There's nothing about this measure, I think, that is serious policy making.
I believe we're at time, but we have extended in the past if we would like to accommodate 2 more questions. Are members okay with extending by 2 minutes, which has been our practice in the last 2 hours? Should we do by acclamation?
Second.
Okay. Thanks all. Okay, I believe it was Member Banya's next, and then Member Grimes. Proxy Grimes.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Preston. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I also want to say thank you so much for clarifying the question that I had asked earlier regarding whether the conversion actually builds only market rate housing, which when you read the proposition, that's what it says. And thank you for letting us know. I also understand that at the state level, Assemblymember Haney had proposed a state bill to streamline converting access office to residential this past February. And my understanding that this is going to be coming back in the January session. Also, that state bill is actually supported 100% by labor. And my understanding, the way I read this proposition, it's very anti-union, very anti-working families, and very, very pro billionaire, leaves all of us out. And that was just basically wanted to say thank you for clarifying and answering my question that the proponent refused to answer. No questions.
Thank you. Can I briefly comment? Yeah,
Yes,
thank you. You summed it up great. I just want to, like, the difference is what's happening at the state with Haney, some of the discussions at the board actually involve stakeholders talking about it. And so the part of this is a product of like a measure that was not intended to like bring everyone together to solve a problem, because it is really ridiculous to even think about giving this level of tax break, even if it would make sense to give it, without tying it to some commitments around using skilled and trained workers. And like, I mean, why would we do that as a city, especially in a union town? And the only reason it was, so it was, had labor been at the table, they would of course have insisted on those things. So, you know, I appreciate the question and the comment and emphasizing the, you know, that this really is a focus on market rate, not affordable, but also doesn't have the kinds of protections that a serious, more collaborative effort would have put forward. And frankly, that we're open to. I mean, if folks want to come together and target November ballot or some others and talk about some targeted things around office to residential or other things with some of those protections in and without blowing a hole in the whole transfer tax, you know, we're wide open to it. And last thing I did want to say, my understanding, I appreciate you raising the hotel issue previously, because part of the problem with doing these measures without talking to anyone is the language is very sloppy. It's all non-commercial to residential. So, I mean, non-residential, I'm sorry, non-residential to residential. So that we're trying to look into how the impacts in certain areas on PDR, impacts potentially in the Mission District and other areas, as well as you say, whether this could pose a threat to commercial hotels potentially being incentivized for conversion. So it appears to be very, very broad in that exemption.
Hey, thank you. One more question from Member Grimes.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Preston.
Hi.
You had mentioned impact fees, and there were taxes that went to support many things that happen here in the city. Can you tell us what some of these fees go to support?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there was legislation around facilitating these kind of conversions that came through the board, and what was interesting about it was I think there was a consensus among the board members that the impact fees for affordable housing, the inclusionary fees, should not be waived. But certain other ones, and they were pretty limited, things like transit impact development fee, also called transit sustainability fee. That's an example of one. There are others for the arts and other public community benefits that are being waived in the context. It's not huge dollars, but some of them are being waived for these conversions. So, it is a question of balancing act, right? Of wanting to support the conversions, but also not wanting to lose that kind of key revenue. I think my strongest objection around this ballot measure is, again, to give up potentially hundreds of millions of tax revenue at the whim of the board is going to do far more to gut all the services that parks, transit, and other public services, affordable housing, than we would get from a handful of these conversions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dean Preston. Appreciate your time here. And
thank you so much.
Okay, great. 2 more to go, members. So our last 2 are actually on the same ballot measure, and this is called the Declaration of Policy, offering Algebra 1 to 8th graders, and this is specific to SFUSD. We have a proponent argument, and that is coming from John Tresvenia. He has a cool background. And we've got mirror image backgrounds here. Welcome. You have 1.5 minutes in order to make introductory remarks as a proponent. And then we'll have 3 minutes for you to respond to questions from our members. And that does not include the question time itself. And we do have the option to extend if needed. Edie Garcia will provide kind of a little heads up when you have 1.5 minutes, 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your service to our party. I'm an Ingleside native. I've served in 3 Democratic presidential administrations in Washington, D.C. Spent my career in civil rights and education. I've past president of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. I'm supporting this proposition. It's a declaration of policy. It does 2 things. It brings back, it supports city policy, bringing back algebra in middle school. And second, and more, just as importantly, it commits, it supports the district's improving math curriculum at all grades, at all schools. 100,000 Black and Latino kids nationally are denied equitable opportunities for STEM careers because they lack 8th grade algebra. That's not just me saying it, that's Cory Booker and Joaquin Castro. They've introduced the Advanced Coursework Equity Act, supported by the NEA, supported by the AFT, supported by Education Trust, the Urban League. Nationally, Democrats should be at the forefront of bringing back equitable opportunity for 8th grade kids. The school district, by all good intentions, got rid of 8th grade algebra 10 years ago. The results have now shown that the education gap is even greater than it was back then. This provides both a choice for students, but also it commits the city to supporting the district's efforts to improve algebra, improve math opportunity pre-K to grade 7. We consider ourselves a high-tech city. We have to have a pathway for our kids to get into those jobs in the future. 8th grade algebra has been denied them, and it should be for kids, and that's why this proposition was approved by the Board of Supervisors by a vote of 10-1, and that's why it's on the ballot. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Many hands popped up. So I believe I saw Kurt Grimes. Is that right? And if you can just put in the chat what order you came in, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, then we can sort that out. Please.
I'm easy. Wherever you want to call me is good.
Okay. I could also just sort of go across the screen as well. I have Grimes, Ibanez, Galata, Berry. Okay. And we can always extend time if needed. So take it away.
Travisina, thank you for being here today. I am a Bayview resident. I'm also one of those kids that had a chance to take, I had algebra in the ninth grade. Ninth grade was considered a junior high school. But going back to me being a Bayview resident, most of the kids in this neighborhood are on an IEP. With kids being in an IEP, how are we going to improve this? No one seems to be able to answer that question as to how are we going to be able to move kids that are placed on these things and move them into a position where they can do um, do basic math or even do some advanced math that's like algebra, because I believe algebra is the gateway to other types of math like geometry, trigonometry, and even some calculus. How do we make that transition for these kids? Because if we're going to introduce it to, what is it, eighth graders? We want to introduce it to eighth graders, right?
Restore it to eighth graders, yes.
How are we going to restore it to these kids that are suffering with these IEPs?
Well, two answers. One is this is a declaration of policy. This is a way of saying just that San Francisco can support eighth grade algebra and the critical work that you're referring to from pre-K to 7 that the school district is currently doing to improve the math curriculum to address those issues. You've got a lot of educators on this panel. I defer to them as to actually how it's done. But the superintendent now has a math policy working group. They're reporting to the board in February. Thus far, they've said the 4 things that improve math attainment for kids is higher expectations, greater student engagement, better assignments, and high quality instruction. So it's teacher support, it's student support, and it's providing the opportunities to them. This declaration of policy is a statement that we think this is important. We think access to the STEM jobs is important. How it's done is ongoing with the school district.
Will the result of something like this make our kids more competitive?
Absolutely. It will make them more competitive because the district now is putting an emphasis on changing the math curriculum. For one, at the very beginning grades, when you get up to grade 8, allowing kids to take, those who want to take algebra in the 8th grade, allowing them to take it makes it much easier for them to get through those other courses you just described, so that when they apply to college, they are applying on par with the suburban kids. The suburban kids get this. Our kids do not. Our kids are among the 100,000 Black and Latino kids who are being deprived of this opportunity. So when they're able to go as far as they can in math, that makes them more competitive for college, more accessible science, technology, engineering, math majors, and those jobs that we are bringing to San Francisco.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have member Banyas, Galata, Berry, and I see member Vice Chair LaCroix hand too.
Thank you so much. Let me just clarify something before I ask my questions. So the truth of the matter is that SFUSD, when it comes to math test scores, outnumbers or outperforms the state of California. And you don't have to do much research. All you have to do is just go to sfusd.edu to get that data. Not sure what is the intention of this proposition. However, I do have several questions as the educator in the room, as someone who's in the classrooms. I would like to know, Mr. Desvigna, what is the level of math curriculum expertise among the authors that created this proposition? Second, what is their level of expertise in developing and implementing curriculum in a K-12 grade public school system? And of those who crafted the measure, how many of them are actually math teachers in SFUSD? And lastly, did you consult with United Educators of San Francisco?
Well, yeah, with all due respect, you're not the only educator in the room. I actually was voted the Latino Educator of the Year during Superintendent Carranza's time, and there are other educators as well. The city charter says the supervisors put on the ballot declarations of policy. So we are limited to the expertise of the 10 out of the 11 supervisors. But I do recall in my civil rights advocacy days supporting bilingual education, the kinds of obstacles that people throw up. And that sounds like one of them. Like, well, who did this? Who are the experts? Parents can be experts. In Congress, you've got people like Sherrod Brown, Cory Booker, Joaquin Castro, Raul Reese, Raul Grajava, all supporting this. So supporting opportunity for our kids. And that's what I would say is behind this effort. Democrats are behind this, our communities are behind this, and we think that Democrats should be in the DCCC should be behind this as well.
So, in other words, there was no experts in developing curriculum or implementing curriculum who developed this proposition.
No, the experts are the people who see what they want for their kids. This is not, this is a declaration of policy. It is a statement of the voters. The same way that we had a declaration of policy being considered by the Board of Supervisors earlier this week. The Board of Supervisors are not experts on various policies dealing with the Middle East, but they are going to be taking a position on
So
that
they're not
very,
math
very important,
experts.
very, very
They're not
important
math
matter.
experts. Thank you.
So-
They're not math experts. I really appreciate your answer. Thank you so much.
So I am mindful that we have 3 more questions, and would we like to extend by 2 minutes if we can keep to 2 minutes? Do our members want to do this by acclamation?
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So Vice Chair Galata.
Thank you, Chair Levitt. Mr. Trisvina, my question, you've mentioned this is a statement of policy. This is a statement of policy, and that's my understanding is that this, if passed by the voters, will not change anything in terms of how curriculum is implemented at the Unified School District. The voters do not have jurisdiction in this case to change the school district's policy on this issue. So my question is related to why this is not being raised at the district with the Board of Education, and why the voters are, to me, it feels disingenuous. If this is coming before the voters, where we're having people take position on this that ultimately won't change this algebra being taught in 8th grade. And what I'm hearing is that this is something that's already being worked on by members of the Board of Education, the experts, and members of UESF or staff at the district are in conversation on this. So why is this coming before the voters?
Well, three answers. One is that it will have an impact. I believe that our school board members, many of whom we all know, will listen. When the voters say overwhelmingly, we want opportunity for kids in math. We want access to STEM careers for our kids. And we know that we are disfavoring them compared to the suburban kids by not providing 8th grade algebra. I think this will have an impact, number one. Number two, does it have jurisdiction? The school board has jurisdiction. They're working on it, but parents have been saying for years, we want this choice for our kids. The school district for years has said no. Now they finally acknowledge that their data was incorrect. And now parents have had to sue the school district. There's currently litigation going on to try to get math in middle school. So this is one more step where the voters speak and say, we want this done. It informs, it supports what the superintendent is doing from pre-K to grade 7. So it's not necessarily an antagonistic way. It supports it very clearly. The second part of the proposition supports the efforts to improve the math curriculum pre-K to grade 7.
Thank you. So we have 2 more questions from Member Berry and Vice Chair LaCroix. How much time do we have, Evie Garcia? So we have
45 seconds.
Okay, hello. As Afro-Latina who went to public school here in San Francisco and loves math, I'm concerned about the process. For example, if there will be limited algebra courses in the 8th grade, who will be able to get into those classes? Will it be just because the student says that's what I want to do? Or will it be a risk of teachers who may have biases against Black and Brown students that have to do a recommendation? What will that process look like on who gets in those algebra classes?
Well, I agree with you about the concern about teachers. We all remember Stand and Deliver, the Latino kids in Garfield High in Los Angeles who went all the way to calculus nobody believed that they could do it. We have to dispel that, but that's a separate problem from this. In terms of how this is done, that's good. Again, it's going to be up to the school district. The superintendent is looking at how to deal with grades pre-K to 7. They have a math policy group with some really good people on it. I think your next speaker is part of that math policy group. I could be wrong, but there are teachers on it, there are parents on it, there are stakeholders on it who are trying to figure out, who are trying to recommend or will recommend to the superintendent how to implement this. I think consistent with the Cory Booker and Joaquin Castro bill is give the students the option, give the parents the option to put their child in. Not every child's going to want to go in, but we should not deny algebra in middle schools to all students.
I believe we don't have much time remaining, but Vice Chair LaCroix, do we want to have your question presented and extend by a minute? This would be a second extension.
I would move that.
Second.
Okay, great. So go for it.
I think Member or Vice Chair Galata kind of got to the meat and heart of what's been on my brain as soon as I saw that this measure came up. It's just like there are, within the city and county of San Francisco, there are, our Board of Education who are responsible for the education of our young people. And we have our Board of Supervisors who's responsible of like the legislative arm for the city and county of San Francisco. And to see that this has come forward through the board, which is which like things regarding our young people, apart from the public education enrichment funds, like it's not necessarily their wheelhouse, to use just different words. So I'm just putting that out there. It's just like a thing that come up for me. And as someone who comes from a family of educators, I also took good pre-algebra in middle school though. So like I get where I guess maybe a lot of people are coming from with like wanting to see our young people, have access to certain things and succeed. And and I feel that. I think like over the past, few, especially since 2020, we've seen a lot of people talking about like how we can support young people. Everyone has been so passionate about, our students in schools. And I will just keep my question to this. What would it take, or how will it be decided who takes Algebra 1 and who doesn't at school sites? Is there any specific criteria or a selection process? And what can we do to ensure that this opportunity is available to all students across schools? I think with the conversation around like Lowell, Lowell High School, not to get into that too much, we see that different schools, SFUSD schools are treated differently. And I just want to make sure if this does move forward and our school board does move forward with this education plan, that it's serving all of our young people the same way.
I agree with you totally on your sentiments. That's why this is not an educational policy made by the supervisors. The supervisor's role was to elevate the voice of the people who want this and put it on the ballot. The educational questions that all you have raised, those are all going to be done at 555 Franklin. Stakeholders with the math teachers, with the parents, with the students, on the schools, the union, everybody. This is an educational policy decision. The various decisions you made about, is it going to be a school site? Is it at the district level? Is it parents' choice? All of those things, those are up to the educators at 555 Franklin. It's not up to the Board of Supervisors. It's not up to the mayor. And that by the same token, when Cory Booker, Joaquin Castro, and others say we want to support, we specifically identified 8th grade algebra in their legislation and put money behind it. There are opportunities for 8th grade algebra. It's essential for our kids. How it's done, those are all things that we hope that this group will support the voices of the parents who want this and supporting this measure. And then we continue at it to make sure that what's going on at the school board meetings does reflect our values and our needs as a city.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on, John Tresvenia, to talk about this declaration of policy. All right.
Follow up, or are we very much?
I think we are out of time, and we do have one more. So you actually do have another bite at the apple, potentially.
Well, I'll follow up with Mr. Tresvenia separately. Thank you so much.
That sounds great. So our last but not least, and thank you all for hanging in there for going on, almost 3 hours now. we will have a final representative as the opponent to that ballot measure, and that's declaration of policy offering Algebra 1 to 8th graders. Thank you, Rory Abernethy. I'll go through some of the time allocations. So you will have 1.5 minutes to speak, and then you'll have 3 minutes to respond to questions from our DCCC members. The questions themselves will not count into the time. Lately, we've been adding time extensions as members approve of that. And our ED Moises Garcia will give you a little signal, the old-fashioned paper kind. We appreciate that as educators when you're getting close to time.
Do I start now?
Oh, go for it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Rory Abernathy, and I'm an SFUSD math educator and a member of the SF Math Educators and Equity Caucus. We are in support of a detracked and desegregated 8th grade Algebra 1 class in SFUSD middle schools. We are not in support of this ballot measure. A detracked and desegregated Algebra 1 option for 8th grade would allow SPED, EL, and students of all races and backgrounds to take Algebra 1 as an elective concurrently with Math 8 within an 8-period middle school day. This option is more affordable, faster to implement, easier to staff, and serves more SFUSD students. Algebra 1 in middle school should be 100% a family and student choice, fully detracked with no gatekeeping, no barriers, and no limits. With this ballot measure is in the first place frivolous. In May 2023, the SFUSD board voted to have Algebra 8 back in middle schools in response to the Algebra 1 lawsuit. It is already happening. There is a task force that does not include educators. It was not advertised. The minutes are not published, and the meeting times are not revealed to the public and locations. It is a secret math task force. So the ballot measure has no purpose given the Board of Supervisors has no jurisdiction over the Board of Ed. This ballot measure is not centered and uplifting SFUSD students. It has no funding, it has no logistical details, and therefore it is not implementable. Given our city budget, SFUSD state budget shortfalls, it is vital that we fulfill our current legal mandates to our families and students. Currently, we're out of compliance with induction requirements, staffing, EL requirements, unsafe facilities, SPED minutes and requirements, and daily attendance, and the list goes on. And that $800 million legislative thing from Cory Booker will not be a drop in the bucket for the entire United States of America to pay for this. This makes this the makers of this ballot measure give no clear and realistic and sustainable funding source. You may have, and also I want to point out, NEA and AFT do not publicly support 8th grade algebra. I am a delegate to both. I am working closely with the STEAM caucus, so he's shared misinformation. Also, the school board is not including and inviting educators into this conversation. The other thing I will say is that parents have also looked for anti-trans and anti-CRT ballot measures throughout the entire United States of America. So saying that because parents want something, we have to jump through hoops to get it is not necessarily the case when you need to defer to educators and people who are in the classrooms and in the schools. You may have heard there is a national teacher shortage. This ballot measure will greatly impact STEM staffing in middle schools. Currently, you have core classes in 6th grade. So if you move to tracking, then that means those teachers who have multiple subject credentials will not be able to remain. Then there will be no one to staff those 6th grade classrooms. And so in general, this will cause major upheaval. It will cost lots of money. And so none of us, a lot of the educators are not understanding when I was told that I will not have money for graphing notebooks next year, protractors and folders to give all of my students, that we suddenly have money to get brand new curriculum, to do staffing, PD, all this development, change every master schedule for 8th grade algebra. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Abernathy. So we will have questions then. Actually, are there any questions? Great. Member Ibanez, and I'll be on stack next. You'll have 3 minutes. Oh, and then Member Proxy Grimes.
So first and foremost, thank you, Mrs. Abernathy, for taking the time to join us. I know you're a middle school math teacher and very engaged and very involved, not just at the district level, at the state level, and at the national level in dealing with math and curriculum. Our previous speaker or the proponent seemed to think that you don't need to have any expertise levels to understand how you develop curriculum and how you implement curriculum. Can you tell us how long does it take to develop curriculum and how long does it take to implement it and what possibly that may be the cost?
Right. So when you adopt a new curriculum, it is a 4-year cycle. The first year should be audit. The second year is analysis. The third year is pilot. And the fourth year is implementation. This requires professional development, additional staff, additional time, and millions upon millions of dollars to purchase said curriculum. So our current curriculum, with full transparency, is not state approved because when Common Core came around, everybody was scrambling around. There were no materials. We developed our own curriculum, which in fact is become very popular. People are constantly reaching out to me because people all over the world and all over the country are adopting, especially the K-5 SFUSD math curriculum. And so it has served us well if you look at our state test scores. Inevitably, you'll have to adopt new curriculum. That's just how the story goes. But my question is, and see, the thing is, nobody's against a sustainable and reasonable option for 8th grade algebra, but we're trying to understand, like we were told, we're not sure when our raises are coming. We were told, I am told I'm not able to get basic supplies, and yet it's not clear how we're going to pay for all of this. So in terms of the implementation process, the other thing is our tracking model for SFUSD is a national model. The NCTM has literally called SFUSD, our pedagogy, our curriculum, and our tracking model a national model officially. And so what also in the ballot measure, it's very insulting because they say a lot of things aren't being done that are being done. They're just not being funded. So we have all of the things, most of the things in the ballot measure. In fact, the majority of it is already in place. There's already a move and a group, that's a secret group that nobody can be invited to. I wasn't invited. I didn't even know about it. There's no emails. But that group is doing something to move towards 8th grade algebra. There's already all of those equity, all of those catching up kids, all of those things already in place in SFUSD. We just don't have many of our staff. So implementation is another cost when we can't cover the basic ones that already exist.
Thank you. And Proxy Grimes.
Ms. Abernathy, thank you very much for your time. I'm getting the feeling from what you're telling me is that your group of teachers have not been included in on any of this at all. And y'all are the ones who are on the ground with my babies. I didn't father any children, but you are on the ground with my babies trying to figure out how to make this work. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And it's a struggle because, yeah.
You're breaking up. Can you say that again?
Oh, I was just going to say that it's a struggle because even though we've been able to have the results we've had outperforming the state, we've done it with very limited resources because, as you know, the state of California says our students don't need to buy any supplies, not a pencil, not a paper, not a protractor, not anything. So those are the fundamental just tools they need to do the mathematics just at any level. And so we were not included, and we could have told them what's needed to make this equitable and to make this possible and to make this affordable and sustainable. They didn't ask us at all. They made it like super secret, totally shut out. Go look on the website. No minutes, no announcement of meetings, nothing. No transparency.
So at this point, since you guys are both in front of us, is there any possible way you guys can work together?
I haven't even been told when these meetings are. So there's no invite to work together. So right now, educators, we're working together. We always work together. We do that every day. But no, most people I know don't even know this is happening. Most math teachers don't even know it's happening. We weren't informed, invited, or told. We weren't consulted. Personally, I think it's going to crash and burn because of that. I think it's going to be an Empower Part 2. It's going to be a massive waste of money because you're not asking educators if it makes sense. And then it's like a butterfly effect. When you change one thing, it affects EL, it affects Ed Code, it affects all the rights of students. And if you're not including us and parents aren't invited either to this, by the way. This math, I call it the math cabal because it's super secret. Nobody's invited. You guys aren't invited. So if you're not including all of our voices so we can ask questions and look out for pitfalls, it's not going to work. And it's just going to be a massive waste of money. Cory Booker might as well set his money on fire. I mean, sorry, but seriously.
But do you think that if there were a space provided, they come and meet you at the same time, you meet them at the same time, could there be a time when you guys could sit down and sort of work together on this?
So you guys understand what's happening. There's political pressure on board member Mortadami and Fisher Lisa to get this done. And so they're doubling the timeline. It is a 4-year timeline they're trying to push into a 1.5 years because they promised all these people they would have 8th grade algebra. And so they're not willing, I don't think, to shift on that timeline. The timeline is really clear. It's outlined in every district across the country. A year of auditing. We did auditing this year. They're doing auditing and analysis in 1 year. They're doing piloting and adoption next year. It's nuts. It's completely nuts. And so unless they're willing to back up, make some of these parents angry and tell them it's going to take more time and really do the process as it's been done in the past, as it's done all over the country to adopt something new, it's going to be a complete disaster, period. Like whether you want algebra or not, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a dumpster fire.
That's a no.
So I'm saying if they want, so I'm saying I don't see the will on the side of the board members and the superintendent to do this. We've seen no indication, and we've been speaking out about it and asking questions. We've seen no goodwill on the part of the board members that are pushing this and the superintendent to include us. Nothing. No outreach, no nothing.
Okay.
It's just an email away. All he has to do is email and let people know. It has not done that. And in fact, it's the opposite. When we ask questions, it's super secret.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to know.
And Mr. Graham, just to add more, when people talk about Black and brown kids being left out of math, the truth of the matter is that we're being their little pawns. Black and brown kids should not be used to this. What this measure is going to do, it's actually going to track our kids, whether certain kids are going to take algebra, and then the rest of us, which are Black and brown and poor kids, will be left out. SFUSD actually detracted for all kids to be able to take algebra, advanced algebra, and everything in high school. And Ms. Afrani is more of an expert at this, and she can talk more about that.
I want to be mindful of time and happy to extend by another minute if needed, because it sounds like this is a rich discussion. Members, can we do that? Or do we need 2 minutes?
So move.
Okay.
1 minute.
Okay. Thank you.
2 minutes. Okay. I just want to say to the people that would be greatly impacted, people talk about Black and brown, but I want to talk about SPED, EL, and newcomer students. And that's EL is all kinds of EL, Chinese kids, all kinds of kids, right? So I have a kid who, for example, is not as strong in, I have kids that are not as strong as English because they don't speak any English. We have so many newcomers. I don't know why the board's not talking about that. We have so many newcomers. I've never seen this in San Francisco. A lot of kids don't speak any English. We can still work with them, but if they're tracked in English, they can't ever take algebra because of the way the master schedule is set up. So now you're keeping out SPED kids who are good at math, EL kids who are good at math, because a track system will keep them out because the master schedule doesn't allow for it. So it's just so problematic to go back to this tracking. And that's what this group is pushing for, this internal secret group. They're not just pushing for algebra 8 in a detracked way. They're pushing for straight up tracking from 4th to 12th, because tracking goes all the way through and it tracks every subject all day, not just math.
Thank you. I think those are the questions that we have from our members, and appreciate your time, Rory Abernethy. And thank you for staying on a little longer. To all our members who are still here till the very end. And what I'll do to close out our endorsement interviews is just remind us all again that the DCCC will convene as a body on Wednesday, December 13th in person for the first time. We'll be at Milton Marks Auditorium. And so please be aware that there's actually going to be a security screening because that's the state building. So just allow a little extra time to be there. And we are starting at 6:30, although our members will be arriving early. We will have votes on the endorsements for the Superior Court judge races, as well as the ballot measures that we heard today, and also that Ethics Commission, a measure that we were not able to hear today. Thank you all for your time and have a great rest of your Saturday. Be well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.